Welcome back, everybody. Very interesting episode for today. Before we get into that, though, the business side of the house. How is this podcast possible? It's possible because of Black Rifle Coffee and their continued support that allows me to do this. Let's go to their website and see what they have to offer, shall we? 22 count rounds. These go into your Keurig. I guess if you hate yourself, but you like coffee, this is a good solution. I might just put this in my lip as a dip as opposed to making a Keurig. Actually, I'm just talking shit. I have nothing against Keurig. It's just not my particular cup of coffee, if you will. I like a nice pour over. I like anything, even a Keurig, above a French press. Because I think French press says a lot about you as a person. Again, I'm just joking. Black Rifle Coffee, they have the roast, the slider. Light to dark. Currently, right now, what we're using in our coffee machine at the coffee shop, Silencer Smooth. It is amazing as an espresso shot. Underneath that, apparel and gear, coffee bundles, coffee sampler. There's over 1 million followers on social media. And like I talked about last Friday, if you click at the very top, you can look at all the veteran causes that Black Rifle Coffee supports. That's what I love about the brand more than the coffee itself, the founders and what they actually do with it. Very soon, 2 weeks from this episode coming out, we're heading to France, jumping into the 80th anniversary of D-Day with Black Rifle. There's going to be some amazing content that comes from that. Let's talk about my guests today. Jay and Adam. So Adam has been on before. If you're on Instagram, there's a really cool Instagram page called Police Posts. Some of the stuff they put on there is really hard to watch because they're really bad situations. And sometimes it's cops just getting owned. I don't think a lot of people know how hard of a job it is. They're quick to critique. They've never walked a mile in their shoes. And I'm not making an excuse for officers that fall below the standard that we expect of them. But most people have no idea what it means to live that life. Adam is, the first time I met him, he was running that page. And I think he might have a team now that's working with him. But I'll say maybe I'm wrong. He can correct me if I'm wrong. But he's running the back end of that page. It drives a lot of attention and awareness. And what I like is they provide a breakdown as well. So with Adam today is Jay. They have a program called Effective Fitness Combatives. We're going to talk a lot today about where law enforcement falls short. And a lot of it has to do in the training realm. This might be a tough one for people to listen to who are supporters of law enforcement or law enforcement themselves. And I don't care because we need to have hard conversations. You work in essentially a no-fail environment. When people call 911, they expect people to show up that are capable and competent and to basically solve their problems that they're having on their worst day. So the EFC, I'm going to describe that as, I know that there's a lot more to it, but I think a lot about what we talked about today is what happens when a police officer puts his hands on another human being, the complexities that can come from that individually or with a team. And they have an entire program that is based in decades of law enforcement experience to try to improve officers' abilities specifically in that moment. And perhaps that's best to leave it at that because Adam and Jay can do a much better job of explaining it than I can. So let's get into it. Episode 326 with Adam and Jay from EFC, Effective Fitness Combatives. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke.
Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. Get cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
What do you boys want to kick it off at?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. Well, I've had you on before.
You have.
I don't remember what episode number it was.
157.
Holy cow.
That was many years ago then.
2020.
Were we breaking COVID protocol? Were we being criminals
Was there
at that
COVID
time?
protocol?
I hope so. I hope so.
Montana took it very seriously, as did most places, for, I'd say, somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
I think where it changed is farther on into that particular, what's the word? Guidance at a federal level. I don't think I don't want to say they deviated, but I think the right word is deviated, and we're just a little bit looser.
Yeah.
It was like California, but not,
Okay.
is how I would describe it.
All right. I just
But
remember
not.
we rented a SUV with Florida plates because we lived in New York, and you weren't allowed to go into Florida like 2-3 weeks after they shut down the whole country. And we rented that like a car and drove to my in-laws, and then just stayed there for like a month and a half and let the kids do school.
Yeah.
They were just doing it online anyways. We could be outside swimming, hanging out. Like,
Yeah.
what are we going to do in Buffalo in the middle of March?
This wasn't a bad place to weather that time period. It off-road vehicle sales went through the roof.
Oh, I bet.
I can imagine.
Like the
yeah.
dealerships were like, I mean, if you want a Razor, yeah, you can come back in like 3 years. Motorcycles, like off-road, I mean, literally,
Yeah.
people were just out in every direction. There's only, I think, 1 million, maybe 100,000 people in all of Montana. And it's all kind of populated in this L of Whitefish, Kalispell, Missoula, Bozeman, or Missoula, Butte, Bozeman, Billings. And then there's so much more state outside of that. So you can almost still go in any direction.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Be outside.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like my 4th or 5th time here.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's my first time to Montana.
Ever?
he's-
Yeah.
Ever.
One of the states I've never been to.
Okay. What else is on the list?
Alaska, but I'm
Okay.
going there in December. I'm actually pretty upset with the hosts for that course because I told them if you're gonna book me in Alaska, do it before October because I don't like the cold. And they
Is
booked
Alaska
me-
traditionally cold in December?
yeah.
Not a doctor.
So they
but, yeah.
booked me the first week of December.
Yeah, that's not going to be warm.
No,
Where in Alaska?
Sitka, right?
Okay,
At the
You're familiar.
State Police Academy.
He's a big hunting guy. Sitka's
Yeah.
The old State Police Academy. What do they
Yep.
want to know?
Yeah, they sent 2 guys to a course we did in Arizona, and
Yeah.
then they sent another one to the Austin course, and they loved it, and they turned around and booked us.
Let's work backwards on, let's break down for people what the courses are, but talk me backwards to the inception of those and then how you two met. Because were you guys working together when I came last time?
Negative.
Or when you came last time? Did you know each other?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I knew of Jay.
Okay.
I was following him on Instagram. He was doing some. You were still doing the combative DT stuff, but it was with a different company, and I was doing the fitness thing. I said, "Well, I want to do something else more towards the DT control tactics, combative side, and,
Defensive tactics, for those of you who are like, what the fuck
Oh yes,
are you talking
defensive
about?
tactics.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
and so we'll get into the language of, all the lingo you can use within law enforcement. So I reached out to Jay and I said, "Hey, I have an idea. I want to run it by you. I think you're the guy. I know you're the guy." And so it was in the talks for probably 6 months.
Yeah,
and
at least, maybe even more. I would say probably more like I would say 8 to 10 months.
Yeah. And then I flew him down to South Carolina. We talked, and he was still active in law enforcement time. He was with the street crimes unit, basically.
Yeah, it was undercover drug and
Yeah.
gun.
So, and then once we kind of started, and then we kind of started booking classes. He obviously had a lot of contacts in the combatives, law enforcement world, as did I. And we kind of combined powers. I had a lot of knowledge and expertise on the back end side of things, like the website design, the programming, like the whole side. And we just needed the guy. That was the guy. And so, fast forward 2 years, and we've been in almost 400 agencies.
A lot.
Yeah. And we've only been around for not even 2 years yet. Not quite 2 years.
Yeah, I think it was actually 2 years last week.
Last week. Perfect.
Uphill battle?
Changing the culture and training.
Just
or
in general.
EFC.
I feel like just starting something new inside of organizations that large.
So company wise, no, we're very well organized. We have, again,
getting them to buy in.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's obviously tough sometimes. But I would say that the culture is changing because jiu-jitsu helps obviously a lot with that.
Yeah, once we're there, it's an easy sell. Like, we usually book for a year or two out before we leave places. Mm-hmm. Go to New Jersey, booked us in the fall. Michigan State Police booked us the following winter for 3 back-to-back private courses. This year alone, we've been in NYPD and Chicago, the 2 largest departments in the country. Mm-hmm. And they love it. And like Chicago, like some of the guys are in there is like, where's this been? Where have we been? And it's like, it's there. it's been there. I've been teaching it in New York at my department since 2009, 10, 11 into when I left.
Sure.
And then I integrated it into the state program starting in 2016 and then officially after all the pilots were done in 2018. So it's like it's been there. Mm-hmm. It's just the wheels of justice move slowly.
Yeah, but it's in an occupation where people are required to touch other human beings.
Yes.
You would think that that would at least be the spark or impetus for them to move a little bit faster.
Yeah, and a lot of people call it like defensive tactics and like or control tactics, and I've never been a big fan of defensive tactics or control tactics, and the reason being is that's a small piece of what we do in an incident. Mm-hmm. I think combatives is a full spectrum of what we do. Your hands-on problem becomes a gun problem in less than a second sometimes, or vice versa, right? So it's not always just, hey, control tactics. There's actually like a post in one of the private groups that I'm in, and they're like, what are better names for defensive tactics, control tactics, whatever? Like, one, we really aren't trying to be defensive, okay? Like, sometimes we have to be offensive. Okay? And two, it's not just control, because what if I need to actually disengage, create space, and get to a tool or get to a weapon or whatever? So it's like, I think combatives for us is where we really hit it is we try to bring the gun side of things and the DT side of things into like one curriculum. Mm-hmm. And the state, saw it and they were happy with it. So they brought me in, revamped that program. We ran pilots for 2 years across the state. And now everyone in New York State under post, or what is called DCGS in New York, runs that program except for NYPD because they govern themselves. And New York State Police, they govern themselves. But they've actually just had EFC, both of those departments, in this year. So,
how'd you start off in law enforcement? Walk me through your career.
So I originally went to school. I loved soccer. I played collegiately, and I was going to go be an attorney in the back of my mind, and then realized that, Jay is not the suit and tie guy. Jay doesn't want to be in an office. He's competitive. He wants to constantly do something. And
the show Suits is pretty dope.
Yeah, you're right. It is. And I don't mind being in a suit now and then, but I wouldn't want to do that every day. I
don't think they do it every day. For the lawyers that I know, the courtroom scenes where they're strenuously objecting and like laying out these arguments is about 0.05% of their actual career.
I think that's too much.
Yeah, and the rest of it,
what he was saying,
is paperwork, and they're just like, fuck.
Yeah, and then that's like The Office, but like, so I was like, I'm gonna go into the academy. I did a couple ride-alongs. I'm like, I'll go in the academy. It's not the same thing every day. And before you go into law enforcement, you don't know. My dad was in the military for several years. 12, and then he got out, and he kind of wanted me to go that way, but I ended up going to college to play soccer. So going into the academy made him kind of happy too, doing some sort of public servant, and he's old school. He's 83.
Where were you living at the time?
In New York, Western New York, Buffalo. And so then I went to the academy, and then I got out, and it was 2000, and I was like, all right, got into a couple confrontations at work, and I was like, Jay doesn't know how to fight. Thank God this guy's drunk and can barely stand up because he's a lot bigger than me. And so then I started trying to seek out training, seeking out jiu-jitsu. And there was just nothing in Western New York at the time. No black belts. There was nothing. And so we would travel, do privates, come back, get some wrestlers that were in the area, some guys that wanted to fight. And we just started like training MMA on our own.
What was everybody else doing on the force at that time? And what did they teach you in the academy?
Okay, so PPCT, pressure point control tactics. For those that don't know, it's I went to the course actually. 2000.
Did they show you everything? Because there are some deadly moves in that I know we probably should be careful talking about.
Yeah,
Podcast over.
I reference PPCT as like one ply toilet paper. You're gonna get shit on your hands.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't work.
You also can force people. So pain compliance is interesting. If you push it too far, you will entice them to behave even worse.
Yes.
Because they think they're going to die, and so they freak the fuck out.
Correct.
And you can drive a problem that probably wasn't going to be as bad as you just turned it into a place where you're in very deep water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of it too is pain compliance after your pressure points fail, which the majority of the time they're going to fail. And, you know, there's a bunch of articles out there, but one of them references pain compliance fails 2/3 of the time. So it means only 1/3 of the time in a gun belt and in a situation, you're going to be able to de-escalate it with like pain compliance. The rest of the time, it's going to probably escalate the situation.
Yeah.
So we know, all doing jiu-jitsu, that in wrestling, some form of control tactics with live sparring are the arts that work in MMA. Some sort of striking, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. And now the mixed martial artists they're amazing. These kids they're good at all of them.
Yeah.
Before, it's like
To include kicking your head off from a distance you didn't think was possible.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like in police work, it's like, okay, the majority of resisting arrest is in what we would call like an actively resisting. They're not actively combative. So it's not a super high level of force, but it's a hands-on level of force.
Yeah.
Right? So having those skills, and we know that most of the people we deal with in arrest are under the influence of alcohol, on a controlled substance. Adrenaline's a great drug. You know, so pain compliance fails. Now that's actually a form of escalation when it fails, instead of having the skills to de-escalate it with like some sort of control. But with control also comes putting your hands on people and being close. And then you introduce unknowns and weapons. And so then we have to know what to do as far as engaging or disengaging on those things, and the awareness and body language of, you know, when they're presenting a weapon, and kind of get us playing chess and then playing checkers.
Mm-hmm. So you found it on your own. You sought it out on your own. What kind of walk me through your career?
So I was a proactive patrolman for the beginning of my career for quite a bit, like just working the streets.
You're just out there looking for shit?
Yeah, just out there getting into it. I just had like, and then I don't even know how I learned it, to be honest. Sometimes you just have those, like, I could look at a car and tell my partner and be like, we got to find a reason to stop the car. It's probably got drugs in it, or they got gun in it, right? Maybe it's from knowing the areas. Just you started just having that sense, like you could stop a car and like it would be like the dispatchers or guys who were working on be like, oh, he's working today. Like it's gonna be a shit show, and that's usually what it was. And then I wanted to be on SWAT, so in 2008 I got selected, and I didn't know anything. Like I didn't know how to do CQB. I barely had shot a long gun, especially not like an M4 at the time.
What'd you have in your car?
So at the time, we were just transitioning from shotguns to the AR platform.
Okay.
So we had to shoot them. Okay. But
before that, you were rolling sidearm and shotgun?
yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Same.
Which,
The old broom.
yeah. But we all know too, like the shotgun's got its place, but realistically in an urban environment,
Yeah.
It does not.
Having something with an optic on it that's as accurate as the AR platforms is a game changer.
Let's be honest, though. The noise attributed with stopping more people in their tracks.
Yes.
You're
right. Like
Remington
home defense,
870.
Totally.
like home defense, just rack it. Probably
People,
solves a
you
lot
were
of the problems.
burning rubber out of your house if they. Yeah, it's the 870. Just
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
not great past. Well, depending on what you have in there, I'm going to call it 50 yards.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. So I didn't know much about weapon manipulation with the rifle, moving and shooting. Simple barricade tactics, but nothing like we ended up learning and moving to eventually, right? Like I look back now and I'm like, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
It was just being open-minded and continuously working and putting yourself around people that were better in the lane that you wanted to be better at. And I would probably say one of the guys that helped me the most was my buddy Doug. He was a SEAL. On a long gun, I learned probably more weapon manipulation, malfunctions, moving type things than probably from anybody else.
I mean, that weapon system is primary. There was a time where they played around with some scars, and some guys switched to like MP7 and stuff like that for reasons that they can articulate on their own. It's not great also past a certain distance.
Right.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen the round on an MP7. It looks like a 22 round. It's wee. But yeah, I mean, every block of training, it's like immediate action drills with that thing. You just learn the M4 inside and out. So it doesn't surprise me.
And I feel like the M4 is so accurate that anyone can be good shooter with it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with that is being able to manipulate the weapon and move in an urban or congested setting, right? Because that's where people get off. Like, sure, I could stand on a line. My daughter, when they were 13 and 15, started shooting it and rested on a bench, and they can plug holes in the target, right?
Yeah.
But now moving it around people, teammates, like the weapon manipulation and movements is, I think, where's a big shortcoming in law enforcement training still today.
Yes.
Even with handguns, but more so like the long gun. So I ended up being in SWAT, worked the way up from just being a basic, operator to
Still out in Western New York at this time?
Yep. I was in Western New York until I retired last April in 2023.
Okay.
I stepped off the team early in 2023. I knew I was retiring, and it got too much trying to keep up with the training, and being on the team and running the being in I wasn't running. I was part of an undercover, like, proactive, like, drug gun team, and so I stepped off that in early 2023. But we had got the team to where we wanted. Like in New York State, there's a SWAT certification. Mm-hmm. So your team can be certified as a SWAT operator under DCGS standards, or it can just be a SWAT team and not under DCGS standards, which is kind of crazy because you would think the liability of not being certified if something goes bad when there's a certification in your state. But there was only, when I left, I think there was only 22 or 23 teams in the entire state that were certified. All the rest of them were just kind of like cowboying it, or they didn't have the means to be able to get certified. They couldn't do the PT standards, maybe the shooting standards, maybe the number standards, because you have to have a set number of guys. Every operator has to go through a 160-hour school before they can even have your team everybody has to be certified under DCGS as an operator, and that's a 160-hour school. So, like, a lot of these smaller departments just don't have the means to do that.
From a liability perspective, I feel like that's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
They don't get any money either.
Yeah.
No grant money. That's another pro of being certified. But the liability for years was just crazy to us. Like, we have to get certified. And we just worked to where we could get all our guys certified and did it.
Okay. Adam, just to make this standalone, why don't you run through your career as well, too? And then we can kind of kick it off at modern day.
Yeah, I did not do 22 years. I did 7. So I did 5.
Basically the same.
I mean,
I'm not great at math, but I feel like it's pretty close.
it's close enough. I don't think anybody in this room is good at math.
I don't even try to be.
Well, maybe
math.
Tuck.
It's true.
There you go. So I did 5 years on patrol, and then I did 2 years as a full-time training sergeant. And that's kind of where I started seeing the lack of training in law enforcement and started to drive the train, obviously using social media to start my fitness company, EFT. And then fast forward about 4 years, reaching out to Jay and going, we got to do something different because this is still awful. Like, yeah, there's some great guys out there teaching some good stuff, but they're not doing it at a level that needs to be done. And I know we can do it. And so our mission is simply to provide that resource to cops. That's our number one mission. And so with that being the forefront of EF Combatives, that's what we're doing. And I can say this with pretty much certainty. We're probably the fastest growing law enforcement combatives company, I would probably say, in the world right now. We've only been in business for 2 years, and we've already done almost 400 agencies.
Yeah.
And we're booked for 24 completely.
Yeah, we have 36 courses booked for this year. So
Yeah.
That's an awesome problem to have, though.
yeah.
So you also run another Instagram page.
I have a few.
You do.
I do.
And the reason I bring it up, because I think it's important, is from my perspective as a consumer, it would be easy for people to say, well, this particular Instagram page is only highlighting deficiencies in cops.
Sure.
And then people can view it like that if they want to. When I see things like that, I would hope that it lights a fire under people's ass, that they would say, maybe initially at surface level, they're like, fuck, man, I never want to be on this page. Maybe that's, but hey, if that's the fire that gets under your ass, I'm okay with that. But what I would hope from a professional perspective is that organizations are looking at was probably what is happening elsewhere, or maybe it's somebody that they don't even know, but it's on their same department. I mean,
Sure.
how many NYPD officers are there? There's no way they all know each other.
I think it's right around, give or take, 33,000 right now.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, so they're like, oh shit, that's one of our guys. Probably never crossed paths. They see that and like, okay, we need to fix this. And I don't know how much buy-in you would get if you only highlighted the positive.
Correct.
So I can see how it would be viewed controversially, but I think it's an incredible training tool. That's what I view it as. Right. And if people get butthurt by it, I mean, that's a personal problem.
Right. So my perspective on that too is,
police posts is the page we
Correct.
should. Yeah, so people know what the fuck we're talking about.
Yeah. So on police posts, of course, I get the comments of, oh, well, Monday morning quarterback, or you weren't there. Sure. Correct. I was not there. But yes, it's very easy to point a finger and say you should have done this or you could do this, right? So, and yeah, we could do that, but we're also providing a resource. It's not like we're not just saying this is bad and we're not doing anything about it. We're saying, hey, this is not optimal. This could have been handled. Here are some other options, right? Because obviously we're not going to work in absolutes, right? So here's some other options. Here's a non-optimal or an optimal way. This obviously didn't turn out as successful as I'm sure this officer wanted. Here's a few options that you could utilize. And we provide that resource at EFC, right? And so that's where I feel like the difference is. So yes, highlighting the unsuccessful or some of the rougher content is very easy to do, right? But providing the resource is really the goal there. So it's an educational page. I try to tell people that it's not just like, oh, we're here to get likes and clicks. We're here to help you understand why we do what we do and then provide that resource.
I hope that it allows people who are not in the law enforcement world to understand how gnarly that job can be too. It's easy to judge somebody's occupation without walking a mile in their shoes.
It's tough.
And one of my favorite examples of this, and there are good examples on YouTube for those who just do not like the police for whatever reason. They want to defund and they go get put into a use of force simulator for the first time.
Crushed.
And just murder every single person.
Every time.
Yeah. And they come out of there going,
Stress and fear.
Yeah. They come out like, okay, maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. So I do think there's actually immense value in the
Correct.
page.
Correct. Yeah. And again, I would say the majority of the followers are probably not law enforcement.
Yeah.
Right. Probably the general public. And that's also why we do what we do, is to help educate why cops do this. And then say, oh, look, hey, this is a better solution. Let me tell my buddy who's a cop about this.
Yeah.
Great.
What's the most controversial thing that you've put up there? Or what's the one thing that you've put up that received the most engagement out of all? Because you've been at it for a few years.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think now.
It's got to come back to some sort of building clearing.
Oh, just tacticians coming out from the ceiling. Just
I'll say this.
CQB is like one of the most controversial topics ever.
I'll say this. Probably the most recent one that I can remember, I think I got 2 or 3 million views, was I think it was Seattle or Oregon, where they had the pedophile sting, and the pedophile showed up to the hotel.
Oh, yeah.
And the door opened and he pulled a gun and cop shot him
on the balcony
40 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one got about 2 or 3 million views.
What I appreciated about that is at least there was a cop in every direction while they were shooting, except for over the top of the banister. They really fanned out.
Yeah. They got their fair share.
Yeah.
Crossfire is
a serious issue in law enforcement.
It's a serious issue in law enforcement.
Crossfire is a serious issue everywhere that has ballistic tools if you don't train to a particular standard.
And that's the problem with law enforcement. And that's the thing that civilians don't see. Civilians don't understand how undertrained the profession is. It's pretty bad. Unless you're on a specialty team, and depending on what specialty team that is, these guys are going to the academy. They might get 2 to 3 weeks of range training.
Yeah.
And then 2 to 3 weeks of hands-on training. And then they might not ever get hands-on training again in their department, ever. And then they expect them to be good at it. They're just a normal human being that puts a gun and badge on and goes to work every day. They don't know how to fight. Now they get put in a fight on the street with all these other environmental concerns, weapons, unknowns, and attributes probably favoring the suspect most of the time because, again, the profession is extremely overweight and out of shape. So the attributes are going to probably favor the suspects most of the time. And they expect us to perform well. And that's just a recipe.
They expect
for
you to be
disaster.
perfect. Let's be real. When society calls 911, they want someone to come and solve the problem.
Yeah.
And they want you to be an expert marksman,
Yeah.
CQB, hands-on,
De-escalator, yeah, mental
de-escalator,
health
driver,
professional, yeah.
medical professional, and that's just not realistic.
One of my favorites recently was the acorn ambush.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yikes.
Gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
So I did some internet searching on the officer,
Yeah.
and it came back what the article I read, and it's the internet, so take it with a grain of salt. And
Yeah.
I'm asking this
Well, if
because
you
might
click on
know
the
more.
first link of the search page,
Yes.
you're usually pretty good. You're going to be fine.
All right.
Yeah. Even though there might be 50 pages, just click on the first one and then proceed as if you're an expert.
Said he in the military was some sort of SF group,
Maybe,
but was never deployed.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, again, we talk about training continuously, and training in police work is similar to the military. Completely different perspectives of what they're doing for their job.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is, like, your basic infantry, they're taught how to use this M4 and then go out and train. They don't get the tactics that you get, right, that other units get that are specialty units or special forces. Like, they don't get those training. They're just basic. Here, this is how we shoot the gun. We do movements, and that's it. Same with police work. Like, we give them the bare minimum in the academy, and then we expect them to be in a glass house and be good.
Yeah.
And they're not. And it's almost like a call to action for society to force the politicians to make training mandatory continuously. That's true. That's going to be your true police reform, is to they got to train all the time, or otherwise you're expecting them to be perfect in a glass house, and they don't have the skills to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy threw down.
Yeah.
I watched it in shock at first, and then I was thinking, the dude who was in the back of the car, can you imagine how small of a footprint he was trying to make in that moment? Like, slide down underneath the cushion.
Just trying to conform into whatever thing he could.
And we know if there's nothing in the trunk, that's one of the
they're
easiest places for bullets to go right through.
Yeah,
they're
right?
zipping through.
Yeah.
It's crazy. There's no.
I mean, my man went to slide lock.
Yeah. You're right. But, speaking of slide lock, too, like in training, like Austin Police has a video on YouTube. I think it was from 2022. They have a vehicle stopped, guy at gunpoint, guy at multiple forms of less lethal. And then the guy ends up charging them. And you're hearing lethal go off, less lethals go off. One guy goes to slide lock. The dude eventually goes down. There's about 20. That's an exaggeration. There's a lot of crossfires. There's actually one guy still sitting in his car and like in front of the whole thing, of officer that bails out. But the guy that goes to slide lock, and I think it's like the second body cam they show, it's like 7 minutes and 30 seconds in. He's at slide lock for 21 seconds.
Till he reloads?
Well, he reloads when the bad guy gets back up and comes at him again.
Yeah, and so for people listening, trying to define slide lock here, a magazine, it's not called a clip as much as you would like to call it that. That's what the bullets come in. For certain, like, 5.56 rounds come in a stripper clip. I don't know, the stripper, probably not what you think, but this was what it's called. That would be cool if they showed up in what people are probably thinking, but it's called a stripper clip. Goes into a magazine, spring loaded. It's usually got a piece of plastic or metal. You're pushing it all the way down. The slide of the pistol, I'll use a pistol because that's what we're talking about. As it comes back, it ejects the round out, and then it has spring tension that brings it forward, and it's stripping a round. When the magazine gets to empty, there's a mechanical stop, so it'll come back and lock open, which is a physical and visual indicator. And if you train enough, you don't actually have to look at it because you can feel it. So you go to slide lock, and you should be immediately reloading. I tried to never, even on my M4, never get to slide lock, find a pause, do a tactical reload. So you're always top. Even if there was a little bit of a break, I'm going to take a mag with 15 rounds in it and stuff a 30-round mag in my M4. It takes practice.
Correct.
You can feel it. You can feel it on an M4 too, even though you can't see the bolt lock to the rear.
Yeah.
It's a softer, more deadened recoil, and you immediately know you're at slide lock. And so there's the same emergency procedure: shit can the old and put the new one in, drive it forward, and go to work.
Yep.
21 seconds is a long time. And for people who might not understand why, the gun has the effective range as a fucking ball peen hammer at that point.
Yeah.
So your
It's about
primary
force
weapon
out there.
system is empty. depending on how far you can throw. You got one chance at that.
That's it.
And it's probably outside of most police procedures. Be like, I could hit like massive gash on their face from the slide lock to the rear.
I mean, if you're in deadly physical force, I guess.
Yeah, but you need to, the second you recognize that, you have to eject the magazine and get a new one in there and at least be ready to go to work. Without that, you don't, I mean, you have a weapon in your hand, but it's unloaded.
And that, again, comes from most agencies are only mandated to qualify once a year, and they have to pass standing still on paper at 70. So now I'm getting a C, which I still suck at shooting, and I'm shooting with no stress on paper. They don't understand the feel of the gun, right? You said it. You when you're working at nods, you're working at night, you can't see it. But you feel it because you've
it just feels different.
You put enough time in on the gun, right?
It's softer is how I would describe it.
And so then an emergency reload is literally like, I'm empty. I have to reload. My gun's worthless at this point unless I use it as a blunt force off, topping off the gas tank. That's extremely undertrained. When do I do a deliberate reload? I reload on my time, not when I'm empty, right? So it's like these are all things that should be trained. But if you're only doing it once a year and you only get one qual a year and maybe 4 hours on the gun, you're going to suck at being on a gun.
So what is the argument from the officers to not pursue training in their own time? I feel like most people realize there is a deficiency, even those who have the uniform on. And it is their life at the end of the day.
Correct.
That is at risk.
Yes.
But it's sometimes they find a way to not do it.
I'm going to go off of things that people have told me, conversations I've overheard. And I don't know really truly myself. Once I started training early in my career, I just started doing it even more. Started to work towards getting Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Got a Jiu-Jitsu black belt in 2015.
Who'd you get your black belt from?
Julio Fernandez and Rodrigo Menderos. They're BJJ Revolution team. They are some of Carlson Gracie's first black belts. And then Carlson died, and instead of going under junior, they kind of started their own affiliation. Rodrigo still will compete under the Carlson name.
Sweet.
So that was like, a good milestone. But like, how
many people were training jiu-jitsu at that time? I'm late to the game. I'm a late adopter. I waited, I was like, I know how I'll make this harder. I'll wait till I'm 40. That's a good idea.
It had been shot.
When I'm fucking made out of glass and my elasticity in my brain is like a dried rubber band from being in the sun for 20 years.
Not many, like very, very few, especially police officers.
Yeah.
We did a good job at RPD of like, when I left, we'd have like other guys that are our cadre, like Joe Andicato, who's a retired state police guy, is a black belt. Rob Hugas, who actually started training in 96, right? I think he had his black belt when I started training.
I don't like those people.
Yeah, and he's one of our guys. He was a state police. He was on their full-time SWAT team. Then he was a sergeant in the academy and kind of started revamping their DT stuff. He was kind of like a mentor to me, early on of how to get better at doing training and adding jiu-jitsu and that type of thing. So, but those guys will say to me, they're like, man, you guys in Western New York, your guys' department trains more than anybody else we know. They're like, and the guys train more on their own than right? Like when I retired, we had multiple black belts, multiple collegiate All-Americans that were wrestling, and we would they were basically all those guys ended up gravitating to the SWAT team for the most part. And that was just kind of the culture we did. But, the chief there kind of let us run with the training too. Mm-hmm. Basically, it was like he was a retired military guy, 20 years, and he was a SWAT team leader for a while. Then he got promoted to chief, and he basically told us like, "You come to me with what you want to do and how you want to do it, and it was a good reason. It's going to better the department, better training. We'll do it." And we were adding in multiple DT trainings a year, reality-based training, integrating like force on force and some stress drills. Yep. One of the biggest game changers, I think, for law enforcement is adding in those. Multiple ranges. I think we were up to 4 ranges a year when we left. And, for just basic patrol, which was 4 times more than what other agencies are doing. And you could see a difference. That lockback, And the reason I bring that up is when we run a drill, like a box drill type thing,
Yeah.
and one of them is we only put a few rounds in the gun, so they go lock back fairly early, and they're basically going to call and hold. It ends up in a shooting, and they call and hold. The amount of people we saw at lock back was crazy the first year we ran it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, fix it, you know. We make them look through their after actions. All right, we got to add in after actions. What are we doing every time we're on the range? Okay, is the suspect down or is the behavior changed? Should I be moving? Is there multiple suspects? Is he alone? Is my gun up and running? Am I okay? Right? What's my backdrop? If you start playing those through whenever there's a pause, you stop missing all those things if you're not training as continuous as you should. Right? So we started seeing by adding in those after actions, it was huge to changing how our officers were responding in real life and on the calls. And then even so in training. Like when we left, our box drills, like for the most part, everyone was pretty good. Even if they didn't train like outside of work, just training that much at the department was a game changer. And I'm like, how does people not see that this is a huge form of de-escalation, is having better trained officers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's on society though.
You know, to talk more about your question about some of the excuses, right?
Yeah.
Time, money. It's the agency's responsibility to train me.
Ego.
Right? Ego is a big one, right?
I might put that one at the very top, actually.
It is.
I've been doing this job. I was just at a very large agency, and I did a brief demonstration, and they were really big on striking, right? Everybody in that room has way more experience than I do at in a pretty high call volume agency, and they're just really big on striking. They're like, because it's the shock factor, it's the pain compliance, it's this, it's that. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what if you break your hand and have to go to your gun? What if you need to control space and not create space? And they were, striking's instinctual.
What if the dude gets on your back?
Right. So, there's just so many things. That just goes to show you that even if you've been doing
headbutt. Okay, what if he buries his? It's like, I mean, there's a
right. So just because they've been doing the job for 20 plus years, yes, you have that experience, and that experience is great. It's super valuable. But sometimes we have better options now than just striking, right? And so obviously, kind of our core statement, I would say, is we take the principles and concepts of jiu-jitsu and wrestling, integrate it with weapons into the environment of policing, right? And we do throw in striking in there, right?
Yeah, we like striking. Striking can help us create distance. It can help us close distance. It can be a distraction. Maybe it changes their behavior. Maybe it doesn't. But we can't just rely on just
striking and say, because again, it's, I'm going to use the John Danaher term, dilemmas, right?
Yeah.
It sets up the dilemma, right? Yeah. Like if we're in a good knee on top position and we have the opportunity to strike because maybe, they're starting to strike us, and maybe we gain that compliance and start to protect their face. Now they're giving us the opportunity to control the elbow, right? And so now we can establish control. That was the goal. The goal is not to attack the attack. The goal is to gain control, and we gain control through the striking portion to gain that control, not just to strike. Because Jay, you often talk about how the MMA matches can go 50 significant strikes and no knockouts.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the card, like every round now, I think in the UFC, there'll be like significant strikes.
Yeah, they put it up almost every bout. Yeah.
In between every round. Most of those fights have at least each person having some sort of significant strikes in well above double digits.
Sure.
Again, it's pain compliance. A strike can be beneficial. It
Sure.
can do multiple things for us. We're not against striking, and I think we should have striking in your curriculum for sure, which we do. But you can't rely on it over and over again. You have to have something to supplement what your strike is setting up.
Also, what happens if you encounter a drunk Golden Gloves boxer?
Yeah.
Mr. Like, I like striking, and the guy's like, yeah, me
Right.
too.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
And that's the thing. Like, just because cops are training, it's one of the things. I love jiu-jitsu very much. I haven't been doing it very long. I fucking suck at it. But
Same.
I recognize that it's a tool. And that doesn't mean that the tool is used for good.
Right.
God, there's no way to say this without just saying it. If you were a predator and you wanted to further weaponize yourself, it's a fucking great tool.
Yeah, it's like a superpower.
Yes. So why would anybody think that there wouldn't be people who don't respect law, don't respect life, that they're not out there training as well?
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make is think that your enemy or adversary is an idiot, to underestimate their capability and potential. Because you will find yourself behind the power curve real fast.
Yeah, and striking too, like you said, like even if he's not a skilled striker, everybody's got a puncher's chance of landing the knockout.
Yeah.
Right? The longer you stay in that distance and you stay in that game, the more your odds go up of someone landing that knockout. And that might be on you.
Yeah.
Right? If someone doesn't train to grapple, they're not good at it. Anyone
That's
can throw
actually
punches.
a factual statement.
Anybody can throw punches and land a knockout. Anybody can do
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
Get lucky. Everybody has a puncher's chance. You don't get lucky in jiu-jitsu. You have to be skilled.
Unless you outweigh them by about 200 pounds. Then you might be proper fucked.
That might help, yeah.
Yeah. Then you have the LBS technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is 100% real, and I don't think people who used to play professional football should be taught jiu-jitsu.
Well, so we often talk about that as well. We talk about the attributes, right? And even when we talk about cops, we're like, hey, just because we're teaching you these techniques and concepts and principles, the curriculum, doesn't mean that you can go up to somebody who's twice your size and be able to go to work, right? We have to also incorporate tactics, sound judgment, right?
My pet peeve.
Time, right? Because again, like if you look at a lot of older body cam footage, it was a rush to get them in handcuffs. A rush. Why?
Well, was that just because they were easier to control? They were less of a threat in cuffs?
No, hands kill. So we got to control the
Gotta
hands
control
right
the
away.
hands. Yes.
But that's because nobody knew how to control the body, which is crazy because
Yeah,
jiu-jitsu really didn't arrive in the U.S. till like 93 when Hoist comes in and beats the piss out of everybody.
Yeah.
But wrestling's been around forever.
Only since like the Roman time, though.
Right.
Yeah. Just a couple
So it's
thousand
like-
years. Yeah.
Where is that? When we're vertical, we use more wrestling skills in our curriculum than we do jiu-jitsu.
Now that I've found jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
I like looking at old sculptures. I'm like, oh, that's a nice underhook.
Yeah.
Very, very well played. Nice.
All that Greco-Roman.
But like
Same
wrestling's
fucking
been around
principles.
forever.
100%.
Yeah.
Wrestling's been around forever.
Yeah.
The other thing that I found with doing so much training lately, not lately, I should say, for the better part of almost 2 decades now, is underhooks are trained and overhooks are trained responses. If you don't train, you don't know how to do a whizzer or an overhook.
You posted a video about that today.
Yes, I
mean,
did.
Again, an example.
We
It was
did?
a 15-year-old.
Oh, okay.
A 15-year-old.
Well, I didn't do it.
Who, and I wonder what.
Oh, yeah, that's an older video, but
Yeah.
it just
Yes.
resurfaced
I don't know
again.
why they got that close,
Yes.
but this kid basically comes in, gets the inside space, wraps the dude up, and just, I mean, people don't understand what happens if you get
Sure.
your head
Yes.
back behind you. And, like, the guy goes down.
Yeah.
Thankfully, everybody was like, nah, and they kind of like pulled him off, and he was
Yeah.
able to roll. But
It was
that
on
was
grass, too.
Yeah.
It was on grass. Luckily, it was on grass.
15-year-old kid got double underhooks.
Yes.
Got what looked like maybe a gable grip, actually, and just popped the guy
Yeah.
right over.
Athletic kid with attributes, right?
That's it. That's
At
it.
15 years old. I think the backstory that there was a fight, and
Yeah.
I think the cop was trying to pull him off.
Yeah.
And when he turned, he ended up, and then you see in that video, the cop reaches high
Yeah.
because
You protect your inside space, man.
you don't know.
Well, it's because grabbing the head is an untrained untrained response. You see cops; they'll always say, "Oh, if I control the head, I control the body." Yes, if certain other things are in place,
right.
right? And so that's the asterisk that they also leave out of that. And that's the old school mentality: is if I control the head, I control the body. Yes, in certain situations, that is correct.
And that's why in a person that has a competent level of skills, winning the underhook is king.
It's huge.
Because an untrained person, which is the majority of people you fight, don't know what an overhook is.
Yeah.
They reach for the shoulders, they reach for your head, they don't know what to do with that arm. Direct route to the back.
Please
Yeah.
do.
Safest angle we can have for a takedown.
Yeah, they're going to try to put you in a headlock, probably.
Correct.
Yeah.
But can we also say now, where does that help us in courtroom documentation, human behaviors? I underhooked this dude and he wizarded me. You can say, because of human behavior, this guy has some sort of training. He wrestled in middle school.
Yeah.
He wrestled in
yeah.
high school. He did jiu-jitsu, maybe Army Combatives, something where he learned how to do an overhook or what is known as a whizzer.
Yeah.
Because an untrained person doesn't know what that is.
Correct.
Yeah, I think in most untrained people, you'll see them go for the classic just headlock.
Correct.
Which,
I mean, you'll see cops do that too.
yeah.
I mean, you see cops.
But
do
that's
that.
why.
That's why, because they don't
how
because
to
they don't
win
know.
inside space. They don't know underhooks.
Well, everybody likes to think they rise to the occasion. I think everybody at this table realizes you fall to the level you're training.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Going red isn't going to solve every problem.
Yeah, I've actually heard people say that. I thought that was a joke.
No, it's
I have
not.
a buddy, Paul Sharp, who was a Chicago.
I know Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, would tell me about people who would say, I don't need to train. I'm a game time player. And I would look him dead in the eye. I'd be like, shut the fuck up, Paul. Nobody has ever said that to you.
Yeah.
And I have now heard it said. And I'm like, do you have 20 minutes? Because I want to see this. What, I mean, like, should we play bodies hit the floor? Like, what do we need to do here? Like, let's get it on.
Play Disturbed.
Like, eye gouge. Like, oh, you fucker.
They truly do say that. And again, it's kind of like emotional intelligence, right? Like they think that they're going to be better in a situation than they truly are.
Why? Here's the biggest issue.
They don't know.
How do you get around ego? I truly believe, and I don't say this negatively, we all have egos. It's about keeping your ego in check. Sure. So for me, I had heard about jiu-jitsu for a long time. People were so boisterous about it. I'm like, get away from me.
Yeah.
Like it was nowhere. I think it has continued to become more popular. But I would hear about it and it was almost kind of like, just like, I'm going to pass because you're so excited. Then I move up here. I never did a lick of jiu-jitsu in the SEAL teams. I get up here, I meet my buddy Nelson, and he is like, jiu-jitsu. And we're drinking at my house one night. I'm like, if you will just shut the fuck up. Literally what I said, if you will shut up, I will try a class. And I went into the class, and one of the coaches here is a one-stripe black belt now. My first class, they were actually, it was closing the distance, getting a grip, and then working your way to the back.
Sure.
And we're just moving around a little bit, and I could feel it even then. I'm like, okay. There is something about this that if you don't understand this, people are going to be able to do to you whatever they want to do, regardless of how much you don't want them to do that.
Yeah.
And in my mind, that's like a red star cluster going up in the sky. Like you need to pay attention to that. And if it works and it's effective and you have the ability to do that, whether you want to be offensive or defensive with it, you still have to have an understanding of the buffet in front of you to know what you're going to be eating. So to me, as soon as I felt that, I was like, okay, I need to understand this because I'm very capable of violence, but I'm not looking, I'm so not interested in violence.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you're so smart. Here's another beer for you, sir. I'm sorry that I offended you in whatever way that I offended you. Like, have a good night. Like, I'm leaving. I'm not interested at all. You know,
That's why we want more trained cops because you don't need to prove yourself to anybody. You're not nervous. It's like you would rather be like, all right, I'd kick your ass if you didn't have that gun and badge on. You're probably right. Let's not find out. Let's not get you more charges. Let's just go take care of the warrant.
plus I know what humans are capable of now as well, the deeper understanding. And honestly, I get to beat the shit out of my friends and they get to beat the shit out of me 2 hours every day, almost every day a week. Like I'm good. I don't need to go do that on the concrete.
Yeah.
It's another thing I think about. I'm like, oh
yeah.
that didn't feel good on a judo spring floor. What'd that feel like on gravel? Oh, fuck that. I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
But the ego piece, how do you break through it without them being on the inside of one of those videos that you post?
I would
Trick them
Yeah, that's honestly what I was
through
saying.
adult learning.
They have to experience it. Again, you can show videos all day long.
You guys have encountered, though, cops that don't want to experience it.
Correct.
And I don't know what to do about that.
I've started to figure it out.
Okay. Do tell.
So there's 6 main adult learning, how adults learn through six different routes.
Okay.
One of the ones you have to talk about is like, what do they actually do? What is like real life that they're doing and what do they experience? So when I first started teaching jiu-jitsu for police, and that's why we don't call it police jiu-jitsu or jiu-jitsu for police, because
Police jitsu.
it's not really
Jiu-jitsu.
jiu-jitsu. It's skills from jiu-jitsu, skills from wrestling, integrated and bridging the gap of what we do in a combative environment, right? So like, I love jiu-jitsu. The jiu-jitsu part is how do you build your skills?
Yeah.
How do you channel your energy? How do you control your body? How does it help you control your mind? Okay. But police work isn't really jiu-jitsu. there's too many other variables and factors. So I was teaching when I first would go in service. I started teaching, we got to play full guard, and we got to go to kimuras, and we got to like to sweep them. And that's not it. You know why? Because if I take that cop that's never been on his back before, why am I learning this? I've never been there. And the majority of cops have never been put on their back on the street. So now I'm trying to teach them something that I'm telling them they should know, and they've never been there.
Yeah.
But what do we do every day as cops?
Probably cuff people.
Cuff them and try to take them into custody with us or our partners on top of them. So takedowns and control. Let's start using the fundamentals of control to teach them how to do that better. Then they are like, I could use this every day. I could use that.
Yeah.
Right? So
drop in the bucket.
That's how I've been tricking them, is kind of reverse engineering. What do I need to do to get him to buy into it? And it's just one of the adult learning principles. So since I've started doing that, game changer.
Really?
Yep.
Is it true that, and I've heard this from quite a few cops, everything generally seems fine and dandy until that first handcuff touches the wrist, and then it's kind of like rolling the dice?
So it's not even first handcuff. It's just first touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So first contact, it goes. So
is that because they're thinking in their head, they're like, okay, maybe this isn't happening, and then in their mind, they see like the cell doors closing as the control is established?
Well, that, and most people don't like to be touched by people they don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So
Some of us do. It's a different podcast. That's a different podcast.
You did train the gi today.
That's why you like to cuddle during jiu-jitsu.
Well, that's why he trains on the gi.
I like both.
I don't know why. I do too. Yeah. Why are you so anti-gi?
I'm not. Don't put that on me. Don't.
He is.
He trains
Let me
in the
just
gi
say
sometimes.
that-
I think he
Non-consent-
says he likes no gi
non-consensually, though.
more.
I train once a week in the gi.
But he does train in the gi once a week.
All right.
I have to because Jeff makes me.
That's good, though.
Jeff and Jay both make me.
You should do it twice.
I don't have time. Dude.
I'll tell you
Way
what,
too many
It's a
extracting
classic
people,
cop excuse. Good job. Way to
Extracting
reinforce.
people
Not a cop
from-
anymore.
extracting people from cars,
Yeah.
not the driver's side compartment, but the other compartments. Usually another human characteristic is they go away from you and they put their feet in their pillars.
Oh, I've seen that on YouTube so many times.
So the gi grips on the pant legs, bro,
Yeah.
game
it's
changer.
money.
People do wear clothing.
Yeah.
Where we are right now, jackets were a thing until about
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, and they will be a thing again starting usually Halloween. There'll be some snow, and it works its way down.
I came from Fort Myers, so I almost brought my snowsuit, knowing it was only going to be in the 60s. But I'm trying to get better. And I used to live in Buffalo, so that's kind of a real wimpy thing to say, but I hate the cold.
Did you ever encounter sovereign citizens?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Fuck yes. Tell me about them.
They're super difficult to deal with. Obviously, there's no real de-escalating those situations verbally.
After the show, I will pull up my YouTube search history, and you are going to be shocked at the number of sovereign citizen videos that I love it.
Yeah, they're difficult.
Mostly because I didn't have to deal with them professionally, and they
Yeah.
edit out all the other bullshit. But
Sure.
it is
They're big on the color of law, right? The color of law.
Black's Law Dictionary.
Yeah, it's like all the time. We used to have
think
them.
Andy's
They'd
training for
drive
something.
around. They would drive around with like
They want to get pulled
cardboard
over.
plates on their car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're difficult to deal with. They truly are.
Well,
Yeah.
For the most part, though, you have time to get more guys there because you can talk to them and de-escalate that verbally till you have more guys there.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have to go hands on, so I think that's just what we tried to do with those guys is, don't do this by yourself. I don't need to get him out of the car and fight with him right away.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna get guys coming, and then once guys get there, and maybe be like, hey, come show me the plate. He gets himself out of the car. Show me why this is legal.
Yeah.
So then instead of having to yank this,
Well,
dude
they're
out of
going to
car
hand you
and
the
fucking-
paperwork most of the time.
Yeah.
A full 3-ring binder of shit that you're supposed
Yeah.
to just take the time to read on the side of the road.
Yep. But that got them out of the car for us, and then we have guys there to,
Yeah,
right.
pin them on the vehicles or take them into custody if they fought. And a lot of them are just passive too. Like the ones you see on YouTube are like, it's just like anything else that goes viral.
Their camera is probably recording, honestly, as they're driving around.
Yeah.
They're there to try to entice an interaction.
Correct.
And I'm not going to lie, I'm here for it. God.
It is entertaining.
Yeah.
Only if you're not a police officer.
Yes.
If you're somebody sitting on their couch with like 20 minutes to burn, fuck yeah, it's entertaining.
Yeah.
I mean, say the sovereign citizens, then you have your First Amendment auditors, right, and your Second Amendment auditors that will go out there and just, there was that one video of two guys they said they got unlawfully pulled over and they walked into the police station slinging rifles. And like
just because they said they could? Is that what you mean by like
Well,
a Second Amendment order?
correct.
I think I've seen people on like
Correct.
parking or like hiking trails and they're gunned up and eventually cops get called because that's
Correct.
not normal behavior.
Correct.
Right,
And so there's been videos that we've posted before of guys that would come out and it's like, hey, like, and they're, I mean, you say man with a gun in a park, the cavalry's coming.
For sure.
Right. And so they're coming out, long guns out, and the guy's just sitting there with it slung. I might repost it here soon. And he's like, I just want to see what you guys would do. I just want to see how you guys would respect the Second Amendment. And they're like, okay, cool. You mind if we take the gun off you to run you and stuff like that? And he was super compliant. He just wanted to see what they would do.
That is an unnecessary risk, in my opinion.
Well, that too, but now you're taking away resources from people who actually need cops,
correct,
right? And so that's honestly the biggest thing. And so again, but those First Amendment auditors, they're just there to get an emotional reaction from cops to then sue, to then get paid, right? And most of the time, they're not doing anything wrong because they know the law. They know what they can and cannot do or where they can and cannot stand. And they just, keep invoking the cop. What's your badge number? Why are you bullying me? And they're going to get that emotional response. And then they're looking for that as soon as the officer touches that individual, now it becomes an assault, right? And then that's what they're going for, And it also is very clickbaity on the interwebs.
Yeah, especially now, everyone's being an influencer in different ways, and they just,
YouTube's a dangerous place.
It is.
Yeah, wear a life jacket.
Yeah.
Don't go too deep. Take a buddy. Shallow water blackout is a real thing. Take a buddy if you're going to do a bounce dive. Yeah, because for whatever reason, the sovereign citizen movement led me to the flat Earth movement on YouTube.
Okay.
And then once that led me to Netflix,
Jesus, Andy.
documentaries about the flat Earth Society.
Okay.
My favorite. So check this out. In this documentary, which has nothing to do with what you guys are here to talk about,
Go on.
there are experiments that these guys claim they can do to show that the Earth has no curvature. So at the end of one of them,
Did it not work out? And they were like,
at the end of one of them, the fucker literally proves that there's curvature to the Earth.
yeah, because then
Just
he shines a light into a camera or something like that.
Yeah, and it should be completely flat. And then he has the guy either raise or lower one, and then you can start seeing it. And the guy's just like, well, that's a little weird. It's like fade to black.
I'm gonna find this leggings advertisement and send it to you. So my wife's gonna kill me for saying this on the podcast, but
Poor Amanda.
It's a curvy woman, and
Yep.
she's got leggings that are the Earth,
Okay.
and it says, "Who's telling me that it's a flat Earth?" I literally just saw this last weekend. I'm like, I should buy these for my wife.
The internet is just undefeated.
It is.
has everything that you would ever want and also everything that you would never
Ever
want to
need.
be exposed
Yes.
I just used that
that's the
line
worst.
this week. The internet's undefeated. It's
Yeah.
truly undefeated. You can't I'll post stuff and then I'll get people and I'll say this is why, and then they want to argue. I'm not going to argue. This is why I'm doing it. You're an adult. If you want to do it a different way, then feel free to do it a different way.
Sure.
I don't advise, but do it your own way, right? Like building clearing. How many different ways to skin that cat?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Spend 5 hours arguing about it, or are we going to go train? So it's just anytime you have differences, it's like, okay, what is your why? What's the pros and cons? Does it work better for you? Then okay, choose that route. It's the easiest way to do it instead of arguing back and forth over stuff. In my earlier days, I would do that, and just with the internet,
Waste so much time.
you don't win. You're
Yeah.
never going to win. The internet's undefeated that way, right? It's just never going to win. So it's try to finding better ways to have dialogue without getting into an argument
Yeah.
is probably what I've been working on the most right now.
Sometimes it's hard for Jay to be the bigger man.
The internet is a tough place to be the bigger man because it's largely consequence free and that shit can creep in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's easier to fire off something that you wouldn't say to somebody in person.
Right.
And that I think the world would be better if there were some consequences to things that people said.
Yeah.
I've moved to DMing them usually after 1 or 2 responses
Yep.
if it's not there, because then we can have whatever conversation. They can share it, whatever they want, because that's
Yep.
my thoughts. Usually they don't, but the whole world doesn't need to know Jay and Andy's conversation of disagreeing on something.
Where do you get the videos you post?
All over. People send them to us. I was
going to say, I feel like you have, I was going to say a trickle, but I think it might be like a
we get a lot.
Waterfall of.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So,
I know.
so since the last time I've been on here, I've developed a team over at Police Post now that are full of former inactive cops that help provide content from the page. We have our media guys at EFC and EFT that obviously help collaborate on those pages as well. But yeah, we get it from everywhere. I mean, you get it from YouTube. People send us cell phone footage of something they saw on the street, or even some guys will send us body cam footage. Whether they're allowed to or not, we don't really ask. Unless they ask us not to post, they're just asking for some thoughts. We'll still do that as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, even some of the content. So one interesting thing about us is that Jay posts his own body cam footage on EFC using the techniques that we utilize real world. And at least to my knowledge, I don't think anybody else is doing that. So
No.
From when you were active.
Yeah.
correct. I wish your boy was here. We could
Well,
we can talk about that later though.
Michael needed some R&R.
Yeah.
From what, I don't know.
I think
But
when
he
we
claimed-
started, and Sean has it down pretty good too. So
Yeah,
like
Sean's pretty
he'll make a post knowing that he's going to get the keyboard warrior responses.
Yeah.
And then the next post is like, oh, that wouldn't work in the street. And then he'll like throw my body cam down.
Yeah.
The next post. Or what we're getting now even is our attendees and students. I think he just posted today team tactics. Actively aggressive person that had either a warrant or was getting arrested from one of the guys that was in our class. His partner doesn't train outside of work or just started, but he had run him through the one in multiple officer apprehension, and it was clockwork. It's clockwork, and that's coming from a guy that doesn't train jiu-jitsu. He just was good in the system because Casey showed him how to do it and said, hey, we're not fighting each other. If you go high, I'm going low.
Yeah.
Vice versa. I'll control the anchors. And it was beautiful. Yeah. He just posted that today on EFC.
Sure. Yeah. And I even, so some of our certified academies, so we actually have, EF combative certified academies where they teach our curriculum. They have a cop class. So I teach a cop class at Fall Jiu-Jitsu every Wednesday, 10:30 for free for the past 2 years now. And at first, day one, we had one guy show up, right?
Yeah.
So he got a private from me and Jeff Robertson, who's he's been a cop for 27 years, second degree black belt, one of those.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
And started at one. Now sometimes we get 20 cops, and it's great from all different agencies. We even have some Coast Guard guys come in. There's a base right there, and it's great because the majority of them haven't trained jiu-jitsu. They're all brand new. So we do it specifically, just like we do our curriculum. Every day is a building block, or every Wednesday is a building block. These guys just in 8 months, right? So you're talking about one class a week, and they're not coming every other week, right? They're coming, sometimes they're coming twice a month.
Yeah,
right?
they're getting it when they can.
Correct. And the body cam footage we've been receiving from them, unfortunately we can't post a lot of it, is incredible. And it's these guys that they're not even blue belts, right? They're not even it's no striped white belts, and they're taking guys down. They're getting guys in handcuffs. They're controlling them quickly. What we've had, Joe works for us now, but we have one guy. He's been in 2 weapons-based entanglements, and I can show you his videos after, where he recognized the 45 flare as the guy's walking away. Joe collapses on his arm, takes him down, controls the weapon, controls the hands, has his gun drawn while his partner comes in and removes the gun from the suspect. All within 10 seconds that happens.
Yeah.
And it's just because he trains. Like it's not rocket science, right? And so that's also one thing that we also preach is you don't have to be an experienced practitioner to learn this to be effective. And I think that's why some people don't like police jiu-jitsu because, just like you said, jiu-jitsu. It's like, all right, dude, shut the fuck up about jiu-jitsu. It's like, no. This is for your job, right?
Yeah.
It's specific for your job.
It's not for everybody. I've watched.
Correct.
I've watched. My wife is one of the coaches at the gym, so I get some inside tea on people who come in and they try it and they're like, I don't dig it.
Yeah,
and I get that. And again, I'm a fucking hobbyist. Also, people take this shit way too seriously. Like, hey man, you're gonna go compete? I'm like, I have my kids this weekend. I don't have fucking no. Though I got my purple belt and did a competition because my wife was going to go and coach. I was like, fuck, I might as well go because I'll get to spend time with her.
Yeah.
You know, like I could give two shits about any of that. So it's not for, I get that it's not for everybody. I get that for women, it's a harder, God, I've watched my wife pour herself in to try to get the women's community. They start at such a disadvantage. Size, strength, idiots who don't know how to modulate their weight. They're getting smashed. I talked to her about her first 2 years. She's like, yeah, I stared at fucking ceiling fans for 2 years in side control bottom or mount bottom, because she's like the guys were not going easy on me. I was getting fucked up.
Yeah.
She fought her way through that, but most people don't want to. So it's hard enough to get people in. The difference in that is cops fucking touch people for a living.
Correct.
And their life might depend on it.
Somebody else's life
And the
might
person
depend.
that they're touching, their life might depend on it as well. So I don't expect him to be the guy who is at 6 classes a week.
Right.
But dude,
Correct.
develop an understanding. So not only that you are safer, but the people that you are serving are safer too.
So we developed in our we have a video library, we have an app, course material, PowerPoints, use of force, like the whole nine. But we developed a skills module. And that skills module is not tactics. It's teaching people how to shrimp, pummel, underhooks, overhooks, body lock positions, standing up, all the
grips,
things that you need to do, breaking grips, stances. Train that once a week, right?
Yeah.
Then train it with a partner. At the certified academies, I give them a 26-week layout. And basically it goes from the front of the curriculum to the end of the curriculum. And if we're going to do, say, some sort of takedowns today, say body lock takedowns, the skills and drilling are going to be pummeling, inside head position, stances, breaking your posture. And then we're going to go into 1 or 2 takedowns off of that. And then maybe we're going to do some resistance training from standing, starting over-unders or wherever it's going to be. So again, I tell people jiu-jitsu is not for everybody.
Yeah.
In the police world, we need to teach to the competent level officer, okay, not to the jiu-jitsu blue, brown, purple, black belt, because we're going to get people that don't want to do jiu-jitsu. And realistically, jiu-jitsu and wrestling skills, going to a gym is the fastest way you're going to develop those skills. But even if you're a black belt, there's a big gap still in tactics to the weapon-based entanglements portion and to the use of force, right? And a lot of them don't like to hear that, but it is. And then you put them in, like, we do with like the civilians that the review boards, they come in, they put them through some really-based training drills. What do? They shoot people all the time. Or a lot of times you put the black belts through these, and what you see is they're dominating this dude, but they're dead because they got stabbed or they got their gun taken and they didn't even know it. You know why? Because they fell back into sport mode.
Well, it's not a complete tool set. And
Correct.
As much as I love it, I try to be super open and honest about that. I mean, ranges to me are what is the most important when it comes to self-defense. Again, I'm not a police officer, so I don't have to look about it. I'm not looking for people committing crimes so I can be fucking Batman and put them in cuffs.
Right.
Just got a cell phone and be like, excuse me, somebody who has a badge and gun can probably come handle this because I'm not getting involved. Because
Smart man.
Yeah, that person looks like he's crazy, and I don't want to get a contact meth high or hepatitis. So wear your gloves.
Be a good witness.
Yeah, totally.
Be a
But
good witness.
It's not. There's not striking in most jiu-jitsu schools. Like you said, there's no Batman tool belt. And if you don't train with those things, just like anything else, I don't think you should be. It falls back to the game time player. Like just be like, cool. You're a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Absolute and immense respect for that. But if you think that means that you're going to be able to apply the other tools without practicing those things, you're basically saying the same thing. Like, hey, I'm a game time player,
Right. Well,
just through different verbiage.
Yeah, and this even goes back to our. So I actually made. Today's day and age, memes are a legitimate form of communication. Correct.
Yeah, I would agree.
They all
They're
agree.
fantastic. One of the best things
Absolutely,
about the internet.
absolutely. So I made a meme, and it's a picture of a sign that says "Stay in your lane," like it's taken off the highway or whatever. And I put, not all black belts should be teaching law enforcement combatives, right? And under that, obviously, I put a really nice description that probably nobody read about what this meme actually means, like the seriousness of this meme. And it's
like in the commentary section?
Correct.
Yeah, zero
Correct.
people said that.
So anyways, I thought the meme was funny. Right. Yeah, just wasting breath at that point. And it's true, right? It's, yes, you can provide value on the jiu-jitsu side and the control side, but we talk about the two things that I just said in our mission is the integration of weapons into the environment of policing. Those things are massive.
With the use of force.
With the use of force, right? When you talk about the environment of policing, you're talking about, yes, the environment, the concrete, the ground, the asphalt, but also case law, policy, things like that. That just because you have a black belt doesn't mean that you have that experience in Graham versus Connor or Tennessee versus Garner, right? Same thing applies with the integration of weapons. You guys just spend a whole time talking about weapon manipulation, right? And how important that is. Like, there's some guys out there that teach cops that haven't shot a gun in 13 years. Do you want
that was coming?
Yeah. I was saving that for like the past 4 years, bro.
I'm assuming we're talking about a particular person.
I'll show you later.
Okay.
And it's like, yeah, but do you want this guy teaching cops? He hasn't shot a gun in 13 years.
No.
Okay. Either would I.
Yeah.
Cool.
And if it's just the skills portion of it, great. And can like community black belts help police? Of course,
100%. Yes.
Because some departments don't have. They don't have someone that skilled or in jiu-jitsu or wrestling. So, hey, reach out to your common jiu-jitsu gyms and be like, hey, can we come there for the skills? But realize that that's only a portion. Jiu-jitsu skills is only a portion of combatives.
Correct.
Right? Like, is it an essential portion of it? Yes, it is. And we all love jiu-jitsu sitting in this room. We love it. But, like, we understand that it's not a full tool in the combatives environment.
Yeah.
And there's a gap to bridge there.
Right.
And there's a lot of variables that come into play that we have to understand. And I think that's why EFC is, like, blowing up so much is because we really stress our why on the skills of jiu-jitsu and wrestling, some striking, okay? And then how do we bridge the gap into what we really do? And that's why, like, people that don't do jiu-jitsu come to our class, they can pick it up, they can retain it, the concepts, the principles, the skills, and then they actually want to learn it because they're like, oh, this really works. And then I'll be like, oh, here's a body-worn camera of me. And I think what's better than just body-worn camera of me is actually our students' body-worn camera.
Yeah.
Right? Because, oh, Jay's a black belt. He's been training. He trains all the time. Right? So, like...
No, it's the people that you've taught. That
it's the people that I've taught. So now that we're getting those body cameras, that's game changer, right?
I wish we could post all that stuff, too. It's just so hard because you have to FOIA request it, and there's some states that don't even release any body cam footage, even if the case has been either dismissed or adjudicated or whatever the case may be. They don't release that. Now, some will release the dash cam footage.
Yeah.
But really, I would say it's agency dependent whether they want to release it or not. And so we're trying to build these relationships to where we can say, hey, look, this worked very well for you guys. And Grand Rapids Police Department is probably the best example that we have currently of a full integration. When we have a year's plus worth of data of them going full EFC, I'll go into the incident a little bit. They had an incident where an individual was on a traffic stop. Cop was on a traffic stop, pulled the individual out. I think he went to go hands-on, and then he pulled his taser. It wasn't the best time to deploy a taser. Individual grabbed the leverage point, took possession of the taser, ended up going to the ground.
Traffic stop, as he goes to go hands-on, the guy flees.
That's right. Okay.
It's a very brief foot pursuit to the front yard, basically just like around the hood of the car and then into the front yard of and during the takedown or standing, the officer starts to present a taser, which comes into what we talk about that doesn't get trained enough is when can we present, right? But anyways, he presents probably not the best time. They get in a fight over the taser, and somehow the suspect ends up with it. Yes. Suspect's on all fours, and officer's behind him. And the officer's actually a very fit officer as far as like runs, stays in good shape.
Yeah, you tell.
But it's the physical confrontation wrestling match, him trying to break down the house and control that guy, was somewhere give or take 3 minutes. And he's losing control. Guy's got taser, and the officer ends up shooting the guy.
It was a contact shot.
It's actually still in trial, so I can't really go too much more into like. Yeah.
But the video's out there.
But the video's
it's a fatal shooting.
It's a fatal shooting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And right after that, Grand Rapids contacts us for a 2-day course, solo and officer team tactics, control tactics, and weapons-based entanglement. So we run that class. They open it up to the area. Some Michigan State police guys come. It's our first course in Michigan. And it was a 2-day just kind of like overview of those modules. And they were a hit. Everyone's like, wow, where's this been? So they now have 26 or 28 certified instructors. The lieutenant at the time becomes a captain in charge of training, and he gets a mat room, Grand Rapids Grappling Club, Grand Rapids Police Grappling Club. They got officers coming in and training, off duty. It's growing. They're doing phenomenal work out there. They've implemented EFC completely into their academy and into their in-service. And he did an end-of-the-year presentation. And I can't
I have it right here, Jay.
Okay, and we can't show the pictures of the body cam and stuff that he put in this presentation yet.
Yeah, of course.
But he can read, like, Adam can read off, like, what it was. And it has changed the game for them.
Yeah. So basically, so Grand Rapids is the second largest city in the state of Michigan. So it's not a small, like, 5-man agency. They're pretty big. They have about 305 sworn, right? So again, second largest city. So in the conclusion, they had over 826 uses of force reported in 2023.
That's almost 3 per day.
Right.
Yeah.
So roughly 600 EFC techniques were utilized for that reason. So about 78%, 78% were utilized. Yeah. And the way that they were able to calculate that is they changed their use of force reporting documentation to then have like a checkbox, and they could elaborate in the actual report.
Yeah, they're parsing their data a little bit more
Correct.
specifically.
And so this was it was a pretty long. They actually even went into the history back from, I think it was 2020. So they started with all that data from 2020, and then when they started going towards the EFC side, and you just see a dramatic decrease in, lawsuit, worker comp claims. Like it's just.
I was just going to say, and I was going to ask you guys, there's got to be quantitative data showing probably less injury to suspect.
Yep.
Less injury to officer. God, unfortunately, the use of force incidents are probably not going to decrease because crazy people do crazy shit.
Yeah. So actually, since COVID, assaults on police officers is up 10 point some percent, and assaults on police officers' weapons up like 11%, give or take, from one of the studies.
I wonder if
I can send that to you if you want to see it. But
I wonder if that's because people somehow equate the lockdowns being the idea of the police, or they were the ones who were enforcing it.
That, and I think bail reform and no consequences in a lot of the states. Yeah, New York, California, like they're getting rid of bail, so there's no consequences for these guys. So they're going. And some people are like, oh, 10%'s not that much, 11%'s not that much. If I came to you and said, I'm going to give you 11% raise this year, you're not telling me no. That's a lot.
Flip it to the other one and say, hey, I'm sorry, we're going to increase your taxes by 11%.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
right.
People be like, I have a better idea. How about you go fuck yourself?
Yeah, that's actually good. I might steal that one.
Go ahead.
Classes, because it's crazy. But in this 2023 report from them, also there was 3 situations where guys had guns and were fighting with them, and they ended up recognizing the flares or the presentation of the weapon, being able to pin it, place staples, either contact, like not contact shots, but talking them through, like putting them at cover and contact, and then saying, hey, let go of the gun. And all 3 of them were resolved with some sort of weapons-based entanglement techniques or concepts, and they were taken into custody without shootings.
What do you guys think the likely result would be of that lawsuit? I mean, again, not to get into specifics, but is this a situation where somebody reached the end of their tool set and didn't know what else to do? They were gassing, right? So they're starting to get losing control. They have a Batman belt, right? One of the tasers, the non-lethal, is already off of the table, so now they're falling back to the only thing that they have. Is there a chance that that is viewed as justifiable, or how do you think it would net out in that particular case?
So,
again, total hypothesis and conjecture. I'm just curious.
So, a normal human being fighting for 3 minutes is a long time.
Yeah.
Most human beings, when I grapple with new people that have never grappled before,
you get about 60 seconds.
Yeah, minute and a half, they're done. They're exhausted. And I'll use even a better example. I was up in Zone 5 in New York, Zone 5 Academy, and I was grappling with a guy that had just trained for a marathon. He just ran, was it 26.2 miles?
Couldn't tell you. I despise running.
Okay, so I think it's 26.2 miles.
Same.
Was in the greatest shape of his life. Comes the following week to the DCGS class.
Yeah, but the problem is this. Marathon training and grappling training are not the same.
Correct. I roll with him one day at lunch. After about a minute, he was exhausted.
And I have nothing
Exhausted.
but respect for the work that they put in.
For sure.
But those those energy systems
It's not the same.
God, I wish
It's
they
different.
were though, right? Because I also wish you could do jiu-jitsu and then just go run a marathon.
Yeah.
I wish.
right.
I wish it went both ways. Because I'm here to report it does not.
They're different. They're different. So,
Back to you,
again,
Jay.
if I were a subject matter expert in that case, or say a hypothesis case of that sim situation, one, I fought with this guy for 3 minutes. He does have my taser. Okay. I don't know if it's deployed or not. And I'm completely exhausted, and disengaging is probably not an option for me. I don't have the energy to be able to disengage safely. And preclusion. Every other thing I tried has failed. I've tried verbal de-escalation. I tried cooperative cuffing. He ran. I tried to tackle him. I tried to tase him. He took my taser. I tried to get the taser back and fight with him for another however many seconds, and I was completely exhausted, and he's still resisting arrest. I had no other options but this, right? So that's how I would attack it.
I hate that for that cop. Taking a life like that is a heavy burden.
Yeah.
I hate it for that he got to that place where he thought that was the
Yeah.
only option he had left.
Yeah. So City of Rochester also has a grappling club now, and they're doing a phenomenal job. A bunch of their instructors are our cadre. They're all SWAT guys. But they open it up to all service members in the entire county to come. They actually had a very similar incident not too long ago. It was a shots fired call. The officer locates the truck. The guy takes off from him. It's mini pursuit. And then the guy bails, and the cop starts to chase him with his taser at night through the yards. And the guy gets around one of them. You can see he just ambushes. The cop comes around, tackles him. I think he had thrown his gun prior to this. Okay.
The person running.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know if the cop knew that or not, but he tackles him, and it's an all-out fight. They hear the taser go off. Radio silence goes out. They can't get a hold of him. Gunshots go off. I think there's 5 gunshots. Don't quote me on the number, but 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. And once they find the officer and the guy, the suspect is shot, okay, and in serious condition, and the officer's completely exhausted. His whole outer vest carrier is thrown in like 10 feet away from him. That's where his radio is. He got his gun out, or the bad guy got his gun out. 4 shots are gone during the scruffle of it, and then the 5th one ends up hitting the bad guy. And the officer has like very little recollection of what happened, and all you can do is hear it because the body cam is face down in the grass.
Yeah. Jesus.
Right? So like those situations are like, again, and he probably fought that guy way less than 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and he has no recollection. He got hit in the head. The bad guy mounted him at one point and took his taser. And I think
It's 4 points.
yeah. So it's kind of crazy. You know, those are the things. It's like how do you articulate those things? Graham Connor has the 3 main factors, which is the major use of force case that governs us using force in police work. But on top of those 3 factors, the court will consider all these other factors as long as you articulate them. Size, weight, maybe if he's skilled or not. Were you exhausted? What's the environment you're fighting in? How many suspects, how many cops? Were you fighting in traffic? All these things should be documented in those reports, but if the officer has no recollection, it's going to be difficult to articulate that.
Yeah.
You know, so
and
it's
a body
tough.
cam facing the ground can provide some audio, but
So
not complete.
I'm glad you said that, because the thing I've added in probably the last 18 months or so is as technology advances, and we know any military, police is always looking to advance tactics and things, that body camera is a tool. Even when it's not blocked, most officers carry a center line of their chest or left or right. So it picks up 40 to 60% of what happens, and it misses 40 or 60% of what happens. And it's not a cool 360 GoPro. Like, it's got one angle. It's an electronic device, so it has no feelings. The one thing it does all the time, or the majority of the time, is pick up sound. So we should be using our verbal commands and dialogue to narrate the story of the suspect's actions and our actions to the body cam. Say I have a body lock on you from behind. My body cam is picking up darkness. Yeah. Right? So that's not picking up anything that's occurring. So you got to start narrating to the body cam. And the cops are like, oh, how are we supposed to do that? We can't even, train.
Yeah, you can't be in fucking code black.
You can't go red.
Yeah.
Train.
Yeah.
Stay calm. Give dialogue. That's just your verbal commands, but in a descriptive way of telling what the story is. So your documented use of force matches what your body cam is. And if it doesn't show in it, it matches it verbally. Yeah. Picks up the sound of what's going on.
Right. I like that idea.
Yeah.
And you can 100% get to a place where you could I'm not going to say easily, but you could very well verbalize what is happening because you're cognitively aware of what's going on because you're thinking through the situation because you've exposed yourself to stress incrementally before the world throws this bolus of stress at you. Because the code black shit, condition black is fucking real. People are just, you see, and you're like, oh, you're not with us right now.
No.
You've checked out for a few.
You're
okay.
Right. Yeah. When we're off air, I'll show you a body cam of mine where I actually go to belly to back and put the guy on the ground. And you can't see anything, but you can hear me tell my partner, let me know when you're set. Yeah. Because he gets punched in the face first. And then he goes and anchors the low legs. I do the takedown. Yeah. And the guy's hands, I have one arm wrist grab, but I don't have it extracted yet. And I'm not going to start moving the guy around trying to extract it till my anchor's set. So you can hear me say, let me know when you're set. Then I'll start extracting arms. But you can't see it. Yeah. And the reason being is because my camera was not facing in that direction.
Right. And that because, that also becomes important whenever weapons are involved on the suspect.
Correct.
Right. Or you go to present a weapon too, because obviously if you're in a knee on top position, your body cam's picking up what? Just like Jay said. Yeah. Basically straight in front of you. So if you're doing a knee on top, right, that's kind of what we call it, is your body cam's not picking up the waistline. Right? So stop reaching. He has a gun, stop reaching. He has a knife, stop reaching. Right? And so when you narrate that stuff, it's like, oh, well, sir, why'd you shoot this guy? Right? And then you could say, well, because he was reaching for a knife or a gun. Right? Yeah. You can articulate the point in time in which you saw that. Right? And then you can address it, accordingly.
Walk me guys through the curriculum that you offer. Is it mostly 2-day courses or do you guys do extended stays?
Oh, no. The 2 days are only custom right now. They're just custom courses. So our largest, most popular course right now is our level 1 instructor course. It builds instructors and takes them through the whole curriculum, kind of like our way of teaching, our method of teaching to the why. And we tell people too, if they're not instructors, come because you're still getting the full curriculum. Yeah. And it's a curriculum, right? It's a system. Kind of like you talk about John and New Wave, they have a system. That's why they're so good. You can have super skilled guys, and if they don't have a system, they're not great. So it's concepts, principles, and it's an entire system laid out. It's 4 or 5 days. It's a 40-hour course. So hosts get to pick. They can take 4 10-hour days or 5 8-hour days. That's up to whatever they choose. Mm-hmm. And the first 3 hours is PowerPoint. We cover use of force, adult learning, our I form of coaching, teaching to the why, and then we rotate right into the mat. And then we do a whole skills module. And that is, these aren't tactics. These are the most fundamental skills that we think you need in most combative situations. Underhooks, overhooks, shrimping, freeing your hips, right? Sitting up, frames versus posts, inside head positions, breaking grips, stances. You name it, we cover all the skills. And then we go into what we call dominating bad positions. And I would say that's primarily known in the community as jiu-jitsu ground fighting for most companies. This is their ground defense blocks. But I don't like the word survival because what's survival? I'm doing whatever I have to do to survive, and I'm not necessarily probably thriving. Yeah. Right. So I want them to dominate all these positions, even if it's not great. in jiu-jitsu, guard is neutral. In MMA,
Depends on the player. Some
Correct.
guard players, you're drug into their A game.
yes. But for the most part, guard is considered a neutral position. In MMA, that changes a bit. Now the top guy can strike and put you in the cage. It's not as much neutral as it is in just a sport of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Okay. Less people are going to pull guard in MMA than they are jiu-jitsu.
I don't know if I've actually ever seen it.
Right? Ryan Hall has.
Yeah, Ryan Hall's.
Yeah, but he's fucking crazy.
Like Gary
he also
Tonin.
tried to but Gary Tonin got punched in the fucking next century by trying to
right.
leg
That's
lock
true.
a dude from the bottom.
You're right.
It's true.
And
Yeah.
then, what's the one guy? He's pretty good. He's in the UFC right now. He's
Ryan
like
Hall did that fucking was basically
Yeah.
him and Ari roll. Yeah.
The M&R roll on BJ Penn. It worked
Yeah.
on BJ, but his last fight did work so
No,
well.
it didn't, you know why? Because he went against another good ground fighter that has good wrestling
Yeah.
and good striking. So
Yes.
now he controls where the fight goes.
And I also think he was just like, fuck it, this is how I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Regardless of the feedback
You're right.
I'm going to get. Because
Yeah.
he kept
Doing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
he did. I specifically remember watching that fight because I'm a huge Ryan Hall fan. He's an
I was
amazing
pretty
practitioner.
frustrated watching that fight, actually.
Yeah,
'cause
because
I was like,
he's so good.
you knew the outcome after like one or two attempts.
and it
for sure.
also made it hard to defend jiu-jitsu.
You're
For
right.
being honest.
But that guy, I think, was a brown or black belt that he fought.
I know, but also it don't do that shit in a setting where there's strikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
If you want to Imanari roll at the gym, knock yourself out. But dude,
Correct.
you're in the UFC. I don't think
Right.
that is a great move.
No. So like on the street now, where you have a gun belt on and we're on pavement and rocks, like you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
bottom guard is not neutral.
Yeah.
That's a bad position. Any position where our butt and back's on the ground is a bad position.
Or my
in place
head.
work,
Yeah.
right? So we call it dominating from bad positions. Our number one goal is to get out or get on top. So we want to stand up or get on top. And we work through, hey, how to build frames, wedging out, how to wrestle up, how to get some sweeps, how to escape and then sweep.
Yeah.
So that's like our ground defense block. And then I would say like one of our bread and butters of the course is our one officer and team tactics control and takedowns. So then that's the next couple days. We do one officer control, then we do one officer takedowns. And then we add in 2, 3, 4, and 5 guys. And they all have dedicated jobs. Basically what you do in one man, the next guy comes in and just takes the responsibility off your plate. We don't fight each other.
Yeah.
And they know, hey, I'm anchoring on the legs. I'm anchoring on the head. The next guy's coming in watching our backs. If they need us, they'll call us. Talk about communication, developing SOPs for that. And then we get into the entire weapon-based entanglements module. And that is all from we start that out with what we call deflection to movement out of space or engagement. So first best part of weapon retention is don't let them get on your weapon. Be aware. Don't let them grab it. So we'll have them interviewing someone in the clinch where you and I can touch each other, and the suspect's going to reach for the gun. And you're going to deflect them. We already taught them arm drags, 2-on-1s, underhooks. But everyone starts to push away and start going straight backwards. And then they continually moving backwards. So we teach them how, hey, when I demoed this, I gave you the answers to the test and you just didn't see it. I deflected, whether I arm dragged or I parried, and I moved down range in the direction I was traveling. He has to turn around and find me. I'm already moving. I'm threat focused, getting to a tool or just getting to space and ready to fight on my own terms, whatever it might be. That's a big learning curve there. That's a big shortcoming in police work. Then we go into weapon retention in the holster, standing on top, like knee on top positions, or us dominating bad guy, and then us on the bottom. And we have principles for that. And then we go to weapon retention outside the holster. And that's like a concept I came up with years back called cut, and that's always a fan favorite. And then after that, we talk about the difference of defending a knife and a gun. Distances. We know at distances the gun is dangerous, but the knife's not.
Yeah.
But up close, they both could be dangerous.
Yeah.
So disengaging a knife when we can would be the best option if we have space. Do we have space? One, is it confined space, or can we move? Is it congested? What's the congestion of the space? What's the priority of life in the space? So all these things come into driving our tactics there. And then the gun. The big thing with the gun is, do I disengage the gun or do I stay engaged? And that depends.
Yeah.
How far engaged am I? And again, am I behind the draw? what's the congestion of the space? What's the priority of life in that space? Probably drives a tactic if I stay in. That's real eye-opening to people. And then we talk about when do we present in police work. You get a lot of this. I'm a DT guy or I'm a gun guy. Okay. Well, if I have a 25-yard problem and it's a gun problem and I'm a DT guy and I suck at shooting, that's bad for me.
Yeah.
But if I'm a gun guy and you're stuck in a closet with me or an entryway and you think that gun's going to get up and on me in time for you to solve the problem, it's probably a bad day for you.
Yeah.
Right? I'm probably taking your gun and shooting you with it. And the majority of the time in like rally-based training drills, that's what I do. And that's kind of eye-opening. So when do we present in the clinch, whether it's on the ground, against a wall, against a car, in a closet, in an entryway? And that's our cap block. We talk about controlling the near side arm of the suspect to the weapon we want to present. And that might be a taser. That might be my handgun. Could be a baton. Whatever I'm going to present, I need to control the near side arm of you to that and then have an angle. Then that's my safest time to present in that clinch portion. Mm-hmm. And then we go into what we talk about is post-immediate use of force. What are our options once they're in custody? So they're in cuffs and we can't move them to transport right away and we're getting resistance and we can't sit them up. So we got to restrain them in cuffs. We saw that over COVID with George Floyd, Daniel Prude, and Stephen Dolce. They all happened in like a 5-week time, hit the media at different times. All very similar in that they were restrained in cuffs and then they weren't getting moved to transport right away. So they're being restrained because they're also being somewhat uncooperative. Okay. And a lot of that is just there was nothing. We're teaching our guys to cuff them, search them, stand them, move them. Well, what happens if we can't? Yeah. So that's a big lack we saw in curriculum. So that's kind of how we end the block. We did a bunch of data on that, talked to a bunch of professionals in the medical side of things, and then worked on some restraint positions and cuffs. And there's 3 primary positions. What are the pros and cons of them, and how do we document the pros and cons? What's true and what's not true here? The biggest myth is like positional asphyxia as far as like stomach down or if they're in the lateral position or stomach up. So there's a civil case where the guy actually rolls him to a recovery position and says, I moved him there because he breathes better. Well, there's studies that actually show stomach down gas exchange is better than on their side. So like that's not necessarily true. So we have to just avoid saying they breathe better in any of those positions because there's different studies that kind of will contradict that. And all of them are showing that there's not enough gas exchange to actually like cause positional asphyxia in these positions. So, there's a lot of good data out there on that. Dr. Newman beat Dr. Ray in court on that. Dr. Vilk testified for the Daniel Prude case in grand jury, which I was the subject matter expert on. And all that data is out there. These people just got to do the research on it.
Yeah.
So that kind of concludes the level 1.
Okay.
That's our biggest seller. And that's the bread and butter of what the curriculum is. That's what you'll do every day in police work. And level 2 launches in June. And that's going to be more of like your box drills, training officers to stress, but more so teaching the instructors how to coach that and set up those drills.
How long will that course be?
That's going to be a 4-day, 32-hour course, and it's going to have vehicle extractions in it also.
Sweet.
And so on top of that, to just add to level 1 is we have the ability to also integrate our curriculum into the entire agency. So just because you send instructors and you have, let's say you send 5 guys and those 5 guys teach in-service, we now have a way that we can actually help speed up the learning process in-service instead of just going to in-service and doing the same thing, which guys are getting their baton out, they're hitting the bag, saying stop, get back. They're maybe doing some handcuffing techniques, and then that's what they do.
And those are probably wrong.
Yeah, those are probably not optimal. And so that's on repeat until, right? And so we're actually now able to lay a foundation and actually build these officers up with the mandatory training that they're given. And what that also does is what also allowed Grand Rapids to do is it also allowed them to increase their training time. They're able to take this data they collected and say, we need more time. And when you take that to your review boards, your administration, it's kind of hard to argue with that, right?
Yeah, it's a metrics-based approach.
Right. And so if you look at like the admin stuff, they're looking at liability, they're looking at money, right? And things like that. One thing that we can do is, regardless of the size of your agency, we have a solution, right? And we can actually tailor what you need. We'll find your pain points, and we'll be able to add solutions to be able to help fix that problem that they're having, right? And it's super cost effective. It works. We know it works. We have the data to prove it works. Michigan State Police, they sent how many instructors?
So the first course they had sent 18, and then a year later they did 3 courses, and they ended up sending like 90 guys through 3 courses of 30.
Right. So that's just one agency in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
And so because they saw the value in it, and then even just by doing the certified academy stuff, there's an agency in South Carolina, North Charleston Police Department, which is probably one of the higher crime areas within the state, and they're going to now go to EFC because they're seeing guys that do train it. They're seeing their body camera going, this works, and it works really well, and it works quickly.
The nice thing,
really good.
Yeah, the nice thing about the agency program is you send, say, 5 instructors, 10 instructors to get certified. Well, then you have to get the rest of the agency through in service and get them all caught up on it. So prior to them coming to in service, to speed the process up, every sworn officer in the department can get our app, which gives them the user course. So they have to go through all the PowerPoints. They have to go through all the videos in the curriculum. So everybody's already on the same page. They have that on their personal work phone, on their laptop, whatever it is, that they can refer to any day of the week. Maybe they have a fight with someone and they use these techniques. They can review it on the language on there if they're not sure how to document it. But they may say, you're the DT lieutenant. Okay, you're in charge of making sure they all finish the training. So it's 5 to 8 hours of material, and you can see how far everyone's gone to complete it. And you could say, hey, we're going to start in service in June, and it's May, 10th today. Okay, by the end of May, you guys need to finish this 5-hour online training, and we're going to cover these blocks in use of force or hands-on training. So now they all have, again, watched it, heard it before they go do it. And we know in adult learning that adults retain 10% of what they either hear or see, 40% of what they see and hear, and then 90% of what they see, hear, and do. Okay? So if they're seeing and hearing us do it prior to going to in-service, they're going to retain way more than if they just have to go in blind. And they have that whole course material. They have all the course material, the student guide, the entire curriculum laid out, written, all the video libraries, all the skills. If they want to use that skill library to go train on their off time, they can use that to train. The entire department can. So that's the easiest way to get the trickle down from implementing a new program.
How can we help cops from dying so soon after retiring?
So that's a different topic. No, well, actually, not really. So I actually had this conversation the other day. So obviously, shift work, right?
Yeah,
the night shift
I mean,
stuff.
heart disease is. I'm going to go past cops too. It's first responders who are. It seems to be shift work, largely based as well. Heart disease within 10 years, astronomical rates.
Right. Again, I think I told you this stat. Cops are 21 times more likely to die of a cardiovascular event than they are at the hands of a bad guy. That's terrifying, right? So obviously you have your shift work, you have your poor diet, right? You work a night shift, what's open? 7-Eleven. And they may not even have the education of what's good for you, right? By the way, if you go to EFT, we have free info on what you should be eating. We have tips to night shift. So the education's out there. You just got to seek it, right?
Have you guys seen the videos of Ronnie Coleman as a cop?
Dude, yes. Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. He's sweating. He's just sweating his patrol car, eating chicken and rice.
In the driver's seat, just getting his protein blocks in.
Sweating.
Meal prepping's huge. When I was working shift work, meal prepping was huge. Because what did they get stuck doing? Fast food.
Right.
Especially if you don't plan it and you're like, fuck, I'm out of time. I'm starving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I used to keep my cooler in my car because, I never really took lunch. That was the guys at work when I retired were probably happy because I would skip lunch and keep working because I would just eat on the go.
Yeah.
Or I'd be eating when I was filling out like arrest paperwork. Or I'd set up buys during lunch purposely because I knew it just pissed those guys off. Or maybe that's lunchtime. Sometimes is when those guys get up and start doing work.
Yeah.
Right? So like, why am I wasting this time to go eat lunch when I can eat on the road or eat like going? But it's healthy, right? You have to meal prep.
Yeah, I mean the meal
and then
prep
sleep.
Yeah.
It's just tough with sleep.
I was going to say, for those, meal prep, I think that's achievable for most people. But the fucking sleep. If
Yeah,
you're
it's-
forced into a shift work scenario, especially like up here, I think they do 1 month and then it flips to the next one. And then
Yeah.
they do a month and then it flips to the next one. You can meal prep your way through all of that. That's great. But you just can't smash your circadian rhythm like that.
Yeah, and it's obviously the overuse of caffeine. Is a real thing. Guys are forcing themselves to stay awake sometimes, and they're consuming unhealthy amounts of caffeine, which obviously can lead to cardiovascular issues later on.
Short
down the
and
road.
long term, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And so it's kind of one of those things where I know some agencies have gone down. They think they've tried 8-hour shifts and 10-hour shifts to kind of help slow down the likelihood of them being awake, and even like kind of working different shift times to kind of help combat that. But it's still 24/7 service.
It's never going to be perfect because you have guys that work night shift, and then when's court? Court's always during the day.
And it's on your day off.
So
always.
if you're the dude that's out
I hadn't
there,
thought about that.
if you're the dude that's out there making arrests like 4 or 5 times a night, okay, you're going to have court probably 2-3 times a week. When I was working night shift, I had court almost every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Or I'd have court Wednesday and Friday. I knew Wednesday and Friday were prelims, so I knew if 72 hours before that I made felony arrests, I'd get court overtime. Right? So I'd be proactive on days that was going to get me court if I wanted to work overtime. Then you're like, oh, man, I don't want this court overtime anymore because I just want to sleep. But those things are out of your control. If you work night shift and you have to go to court, you have to show up for court. Right? So that limits your sleep. And then maybe you have children, and then you want to spend time with them in the afternoon when they get out of school or whatever it may be. So, like, the sleep's the difficult part. I did work with a guy. He was one of my good friends. He's a black belt also, SWAT guy, and he's still working. And I was in the drug unit with him as well. But when he worked night shift, he actually took a spare bedroom in his basement and he, like, blacked it out.
Yeah.
And that dude would sleep there. Like, and he was always getting the best sleep out of all of us because he had this blacked out room.
Yeah.
Then there was another guy that we worked with. He stayed up on his days off. So he never broke his cycle. He worked night shift. So he worked 11 to 7s. 11 at night to 7 in the morning. On his days off, that's what he stayed up. He would sleep during the day.
Fucking vampire hours.
Yeah. So
can you say vitamin D deficiency?
So that's what he did, right? And then the afternoon would be like his time. So, like, say he slept every day, say got home by the time he's sleeping, say he slept, or say he would sleep 8 till 3. 3 to 10 was his time. And then 11 he'd go to work on nights off.
That's great until 30 days later, then your swings.
Yeah.
30 days later, then your days.
And it's just not good for your body.
I don't know how you could manage that. I don't care how blacked out your Rupin is.
Probably
every
not good.
30 days your rhythm is shifting.
Well, that's also why there's such a high turnover in the profession, is because guys right now aren't staying in very much. At least some of the younger guys that are getting in, they're doing what, 2 to 4, and they're getting out.
Yeah. I think guys are starting to retire more right at their 20 or 25, where like the old guys are staying forever. And that kind of comes back on a thought I call purpose. Most police officers don't have a life outside of work.
Yeah.
They live the job.
You could apply that to many occupations. Military would be one I would put deeply in that bucket.
So they live the job. And they never have any outs. No friends outside of the community.
Yeah.
No.
Which is super unhealthy in my opinion, actually.
Super unhealthy, right? And those are the people that you see that stay long, and then as soon as they retire, they're already like 70, so they die soon. Or they have no life after police work. Police work's their whole identity.
Yeah,
like,
that's terrible.
I wouldn't tell people I was a cop. Like, they would always ask what
you were undercover.
did.
Obviously.
That was only like the last few years, But like, I would always tell people I was a sanitation engineer because it sounds good, but I was taking trash out the street, so it kind of fit what I was doing. And it was like, so that was the term I always used, especially like when I was younger and we were going out. That's what we told people we did.
Yeah.
Well, I even say, Jace, because when I left at 7 years, obviously being younger, it definitely was my identity. It definitely became who I was, even just with 7 years on. I'll say Jay's done a lot better at transitioning from at least what I've seen. That was, that was also one of my worries, because it is a very common thing. Like, you don't think you miss it. You don't think like you're just going to be fine. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't feel important anymore. I'm not getting calls. My friends, quote unquote, aren't calling me,
Yeah.
And it sucks, and it can lead to, some not so good places mentally.
Agreed.
I'm still getting calls sometimes.
Well, you're not going back.
I have a very good memorization of faces. So, like, I'm still getting the text, like, who's this? Sometimes.
Be careful what you text.
Yeah.
No,
and it's there's one thing that I often talk about, and you can definitely shed some light on this. So, I know when I started law enforcement, it was I had to put in 27 years before I could retire. Okay, that's a long time.
Yeah.
I'd have been
You knew that day one, though.
correct. I did on day one. I was also 23 years old when I started law enforcement. So I was just like, yeah, whatever. Put it on my tab.
Nobody lives to 50 anyway.
Yeah, I was like,
big. Yeah.
Overrated, whatever. I didn't care. But because I know in the military, at least from my understanding, is you can do 4 years, leave, and still have full medical.
No,
you can't anymore. No.
20 in a wake-up call, meaning 20 years in a day, and then you will get a pension and health care.
Yeah.
There's disability that you, depending on what happens, right? And there's a whole system about that, but the health care benefits only come through retirement.
Got it.
Yeah.
But if you medically retire, you get to keep those benefits.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's obviously like both my neighbors are Rangers.
Yep.
And they're both, one did 5 years, one did 16. They both medically retired or claimed disability. And they were like, cops don't have that. And I was like, no. He's like, so you can't put in for a disability claim after how much time? I said, yeah, you can.
But it's harder.
It's a lot harder than it is in the military. But it's like, yeah, I mean, that's one thing is like, this job is every day if you're on the street, kind of patrolling, and it's just so much work, because I've kind of guys that have gotten hurt on the job, tried to get medically retired, and were not able to, and were just fired, and then they had nothing, right?
That's a rough spot.
Yeah.
And that happens.
Yeah, and I know you were worried about me. A lot of guys are like, oh, because, dude, when I went to work, I put 150% into work. Like,
When he was still working, and he'd be down in Charleston, both of his fucking phones, not ding, ding, ding. Yeah, she did what again? Okay, cool. Let's go talk to her. I'm like, dude, it's just nonstop, 150%.
But outside of work, like, I had my other channels that weren't jiu-jitsu, friends that weren't part of the police community. Sure, I had guys that I was really close to, like that were on the team and those types of things.
As you should. But I've cautioned so many people against this. If your entire social circle is your occupational circle, there's no work-life balance. Correct. It's just work all the time.
Yeah, and after 22 years, I had did everything I'd set out to do. So once I got into police work and I realized what I wanted to do, I eventually I wanted to be proactive in everything I did, especially like in the streets, on patrol. But I wanted to be on SWAT, and I wanted to work undercover, like as far as like plain clothes, working in the drug gun community. And I did all those things, and I did all those things with a pretty high level of success. So then my new purpose now is providing better solutions for officers that don't understand it, don't know what they should have. And so that's why I think it was easy for me is I'm so busy right now. Like, I don't have time to think about missing work.
Yeah.
Do I miss kicking indoors sometimes? Sure. Do I miss going on SWAT training days to the gym and training for an hour and then going in to range or going and, doing whatever training we're doing? Of course. Or going on 3 or 4 raids on a training day because that's how the department gets around overtime? Of course. But, you miss those things, but it's not my life.
Yeah.
I know
at some point you got to put it down.
Yeah, I know my purpose is somewhere else now.
Yeah.
What would you guys change about the occupation if you were king for a day? If you could come in and make a sweeping change, just policing in general. We're talking like the entire United States, because obviously there's so many different departments. Where would you guys start?
Mandatory training bi-weekly. And not just in DT, range, building, clearing, like it could alternate.
Yeah.
But there is a 10-hour schedule that every other week you get an 8-hour training day. So you as a department could, or me as a person that would have the God say, could say every department is going to this 10-hour schedule and every other week is an 8-hour training day for people. That's how you implement continuous training. Now, the training's got to be good.
Yeah.
So then we'd have to hit that route too. But that starts the ball rolling of continuous training. There's no continuous mandated training in police work, and if it is, it's not good, and it's not enough.
That's insane to me.
And most society doesn't know that, though. So it's like society doesn't know that. Legislation isn't made to mandate them to do it. So, of course, the cities and departments aren't going to do it if it costs them more money or to have to find ways to do it, or it's too dangerous, we're going to get hurt. Like, you're going to get hurt training. Well, if you don't train, everybody's going to get hurt. You, suspects, victims, like, that's even more of a liability.
And I know nothing about how these changes are made in these departments, but I feel like unless the citizens demand it, the change will not happen. But they have to be educated. And I also don't think, I don't think people would have any issue reallocating tax dollars to things that are more effective. I do think people would push back on additional taxes. I was just going to say I don't think people would mind paying more, but I do.
Well, I
think they would like to.
I think we're paying enough.
I was going to say, I think what they would like to say is, can we get an Excel spreadsheet of where all this money went? And how about
Yes.
we have some oversight and we reallocate? But if they don't know,
That's the key.
what are they going to do?
They don't know.
And what sucks is, you know how they're going to find out? Catastrophe.
Yep.
And that fucking sucks for everybody involved.
And, you know, the big thing after George Floyd was all this de-escalation training. We're going to throw all this money into verbal de-escalation. Okay, verbal de-escalation takes two parties, the cop and the person they're dealing with. If one or the other is unwilling to de-escalate verbally, that fails. And that most of the time is a suspect, but can fall on the cop sometimes.
Oh, I've seen some cops
right?
Code Red.
Maybe he's got a bad day. Maybe he's
Yeah.
going through a divorce. Maybe he's just angry. He's got issues going on, and he fails to de-escalate verbally. Once de-escalation fails by one or the other party, okay, what's the next form of de-escalation? Good hands-on control, good training. As that builds up, what's the next form of de-escalation? Being able to transition to tools, okay, being able to create distance. I have this new saying that everybody likes. So, distance gives us what?
Time.
So distance plus time gives us what's the result we want. What's time give us?
I think it gives you the opportunity to make better decisions.
Better decisions under stress.
Yeah.
More solutions.
And it allows people to gap inexperience as well.
Correct.
Because the worst thing you can do is rush somebody who is inexperienced to a decision-making point.
Yes, for sure. So now, if we don't have distance or distance isn't the best tactic, what gives us time to equal all those solutions?
The training.
Control.
Yeah.
So if we're in close, we have to understand how to control someone. If we can control them in a manner where we are in control and we have time, we use that as time now.
Yeah.
So good
Well,
control
it is time.
equals time.
Because if you can, I
You're
mean,
right.
all three of us know the deal. Like, I'm sorry, there's some people like, if I get on top of you, fucking get comfy.
Yeah.
Here's a sandwich.
Yep.
Yeah, the 5-minute buzzer is going to save you. But I could have a conversation with somebody else and still control them down there. Again, I'm playing a different world where I know they're not going to shiv me in the rib cage because we're playing inside of a rule set. But you're 100% right that it buys you time.
Yep.
Because if I can get you to a position that I can dominate you in,
Correct.
You're on my time now.
Correct. And that's why we don't have to be in a rush to get their hands behind their back. We have to know what their hands are doing at all times and be able to assess them. But we don't have to go to hands. If I go to your wrist and Adam goes to your wrist and we don't control your hips and your head, guess how long it's going to take us to get your hands behind your back?
Like 35 minutes at least.
Yeah, a long time. Right?
At least.
So, like,
it's a hypothetical number, but
now we need to control your body,
Yeah.
then work the arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of showed him a little bit before you guys got here about just a simple way of guys will try to get the hands behind the wrist and they just start doing the circle.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to
Or
establishing
eat
that
an
control.
elbow directly in the teeth.
He just wanted to
That too.
cuddle with you without us here.
He was actually demonstrating on somebody else.
Yeah, I didn't get. I didn't have the pleasure.
Yeah.
He did already try to underhook me at the coffee
He was
shop.
flared out. He was drinking his coffee. I'm like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Giving up the inside.
All of a sudden, I just see these
He's like,
meat
I'll wrist
cleavers
lock
coming
you.
in.
I'm like, that shit's not real.
So yeah, the curriculum, man's been a work in progress since 2009-ish, 10, when I really started changing it from when I went to PPT instructor school, and then I started training MMA and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And then the chief was like, I don't care what the state's doing. I want you to revamp our DT program.
Yeah, he also does have an MMA background, which you didn't.
What areas of the country are the most resistant to this type of stuff? We don't have to mention particular departments, but like, are there areas that are like, no, we're not changing anything. We're kind of the best ever.
I think wouldn't say an area of the country, because
I
I
think
think
size matters as well.
I would think
Department
I
size?
think it varies from department to department. Like, it depends on who's in what mindset is at the top of the table. So like Grand Rapids, their lieutenant at the time ends up becoming the captain and has a say, and now change the department. A good friend of mine is the chief of police at Grand Prairie in Texas. He has around 350 officers. He's a black belt.
Yeah.
He now has 7 or 8 black belts that are cops, and they have their own mat room and their own jiu-jitsu team. So out of the 300 officers or 350, I think they have like 60 to 70 jiu-jitsu members now that train at the gym. Like, that's
still woefully low.
it's woefully low, but
Yeah.
compared to like most agencies that size, they might only have like 4 or 5. Right. So it is changing, but it's getting the right people in charge, getting guys that don't have the ego, or being willing to sit down and have the conversation. Like, if I could sit down with admin and have a conversation with them, I could show them the liability of not doing it, which might make them think, right? Switching the liability onto them is a really good way of like getting them to think about it.
Right. And to that point too is some areas have civilian review boards, right? And obviously they have a process in which they have to get approval to implement some type of particular training. A lot of those civilian review boards, of course, have zero law enforcement experience. So when they get presented with we want to better our defensive tactics, combative subject control, whatever you want to call it, program, it's going to be like, well, I mean, and there's been videos posted of some civilian review boards. There's one in Ohio I can show you, and he's like, do cops, like, when they're like, do they always have to carry a gun? Like, it's just like but again, they're not educated on the topic, so you can't really fault them for it. But it's like, why are we wasting our time even having this discussion, right? And so that's also one issue that we've not come across too often. There are some particular agencies that'll go to the attorney, then it'll go to the civilian review board, and it'll just get shut down right there. I mean, even if it's just us coming in for like a one-day thing, it's been frustrating from time to time. But I would say it's probably more rare.
When I testified in the Daniel Prude grand jury case, that was a naked black guy with a spit hood and cuffs in City Rochester that ended up dying right around the same time George Floyd did, but came
I
out.
have family that lives out there. Yeah,
Came out later in the summer. I remember like 10 minutes in, I was like, they just don't know any better. They don't know. So I need to attack my testimony as I need to teach them.
Yeah, it needs to become more educational. So
I just need to educate
reference
them
point,
in why we are doing these things. What is the why behind it? Or why are we posting his head on the ground? We're just head stabilization. It's just pressure on your skull. Okay? That's not going to injure you. What's going to injure you is blunt force trauma. If I start bouncing your head off this pavement with punches, that's going to injure you, right? It might injure myself as well. If I just stabilize your head there, okay, it's a control point, and making it safer for you and me. But the big thing is like, have you ever had anyone post on your head? You know, as an instructor, every instructor course I do, I do team tactics, up to 3 guys for this drill, and I have someone go knee on top. I have someone low anchor me on the legs, and then I have the biggest dude in class put all the pressure he can and plank right on my head on pavement or on the hardest surface we can find.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know why? Because it takes the anxiety away. Then I make them go all out and do it. If you're going to teach this, you need to be able to do it, and you need to know the why behind it. Okay. Because they're going to say, oh, it looks bad when you post on their head. Well, do you want me to post on their head, or would you rather me be teaching officers to drop elbows and punches on their face and bounce it off the hard pavement?
Yeah.
What looks better? What's more effective?
Yeah.
So now I say, like, do you want their booking photo to look nice or do you not want it to look nice? Like I post on a guy's head and it's going to be fine. You know, the skull is very strong. It's actually stronger than your pelvis. So, like, structurally, it's a stronger bone than your pelvis is. Your pelvis is pretty strong. So it's like...
It's a rough optic for people who don't understand the why.
Correct. Yeah. So it's like just educating. I think it's just educating civilians more. And the media. Educating the media. Because they don't know.
I don't know
They don't
if you
want to
can
be
use those
educated.
terms. I don't know if that sentence makes any sense.
I don't think. Is this camera still on? Because the light just shut off.
Did it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it overheated.
I knew it.
I think they said there's too much gray in that hair. And
Probably
it,
too much
was
gray.
trying to
I mean, I
blend
put
it
on
out.
deodorant.
It could be shiny and bald.
Yeah,
like
no, it's not a
my
big deal.
beautiful skin.
I just saw it go off for a second. I was like,
What are you talking about? You didn't see shit. I don't know why.
what? Is my mic on? Is Jay's mic on?
What are you guys talking about?
You say what? This down? What? What? Oh, I don't know what he's saying.
Your elbow's blocking your face.
Oh, my elbow's blocking my face.
For everybody listening and watching, we don't know what the fuck's going on.
I have no
either,
idea
so-
what's going on. Anyways, carry on.
Now, that is a rough optic. For people who don't know why you would do that, I mean, fuck, it's an uphill battle for sure.
And it's just education. And you know, I think like what would really be is like if you're on a city council, if you're on a civilian review board, you should have to go to a civilian police academy. Maybe just a minimum of like 40 hours. You know, if run them through like the curriculum that we run, or just run them through different scenarios and then explain to them why we do one thing over the other.
Yeah.
And then let them do it. Just educating them. Like, we can't really blame them if they don't know any better. Like, it's been so long since I was just, like, didn't know what police work was to be able to look back and be like, I don't know what I would have thought. And then, like, I think of it like, man, I always thought, like, I don't remember learning how to do underhooks. But at one point in life, I must not have known what an underhook and an overhook was. It's just been so long, I don't remember not knowing it.
You probably knew them, you just didn't know what they were in the utility.
Yeah.
Like, it's a normal movement pattern, but if, you know what I mean? Like, kids watch infants fuck around, like they're going to get underhooks.
Oh, hell yeah.
But they're not trying to, they just
Yeah, mine
realize
do.
that, yeah,
Yeah,
but it's
the
leverage,
overhook,
you know what I mean?
the overhook, they don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
They don't ever do it right. And like,
No.
At some point, we learned how to overhook to defend the underhook.
Yeah.
And it's like that's a learned skill.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. What do you guys want to close it out with? What do you want to leave people with? We've been at this a couple hours, and at some point in time, you've
Go ahead, Jay.
fucking been to Montana, so it's like I got to let you go out and check it out a bit.
Yeah, I know. I was flying since like 5 yesterday. That was an interesting
heard.
trip. 3 different airlines, bunch of different cities.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but we made it.
Yeah. What do you want to leave people with?
I think just, one, educating society with why certain tactics are better than others. People always talk about optics. It's not always the optic. Sometimes the optic's like, again, posting on the head. Maybe the optic doesn't look. What's your better alternative? What's the better solution? You want me to punch him and bounce his head off the pavement?
That's a rough optic on Fox News.
But that's the skill that they get, right? Or like the chiefs and the administration is like, oh, you can't post on their head. But you teach your guys to punch them in the head, or there's 20 videos out there of your department punching dudes in the head. Right? Like just that education portion of it. I think as a company, we do a great job of providing what we think is the best solution for law enforcement moving forward and integrating DT range into that whole combatives curriculum. It's not just control. It's all together. Again, it's like a wire mesh ball of things.
Yeah.
And you just have to train to that stress. You have to train. And if you don't, stress and fear are going to be channeled the wrong ways. It's going to be channeled into, just go red.
Yeah.
But if you channel your stress and fear or train it to break those, we're going to be better as a society. We're going to be better as a profession. And
it's a harder path, but it leads to a better place.
Correct.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Adam, what are your thoughts?
I would just say if you're not training above the standard, you're not training, right? If you're not training, if your agency standard is this, and you're not training above that, you're not training at all, right? And I think that's you can't just rely on the agency to train you, because they're probably not going to train you to the level that you need to be trained at. Now, that's not all agencies. There's some agencies doing a phenomenal job out there, like Grand Rapids they have multiple open mats, right, to where guys can go and train. They have the ability. It's obviously not mandatory. That's obviously the goal, is to get it mandatory, so they have to. All officers have to have this.
Once
training.
people see the utility, the word mandatory becomes less powerful.
100%. So it's
They're like, no, this is just what I do.
Yeah.
right. So it's like a baby step process. But I would say that. And if you don't know something, it's okay. You can ask questions. There's a lot of resources out there. We have a lot of free material that we give away on the page. We post a lot of our curriculum on the page. Jay's at courses, and he's posting options. Like, we'll take body cam footage, whether it's his body cam footage or one of our students' body cam footage, or something we found on the internet, and we'll provide a solution for that incident. And that's accessible to everybody. YouTube, Instagram.
Yeah.
And so that's it. Just train above the standard.
Close us out with where they can find that information, though.
Of course. So Instagram is EF Combatives. Online is efcombatives.com. We have our YouTube page, which is Effective Fitness Combatives. And then if you want to get information on hosting a course, you can email at admin@efcombatives.com. And we can set up a call. Jay, if you want to talk to me or whoever, we can definitely get that going. We have no problem talking to administrations, talking to command staff, attorneys. We have no problem doing that. So don't be shy. Saying, oh, well, they're going to want to talk to you. Perfect. Set it up. So I would say those are probably the best 3 ways to contact us.
Yeah, and we're available for consulting. Like, have us come in and look through your training program.
Yeah, as well.
And we can be like, this is what we would change. This is what we would do. Here's how we can help you, or at least this is what you need to start looking at changing.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, boys, for making the travel. I know it's not close to where you live, so appreciate it.
Thank you for having us, brother.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, man.
Let's go get some training in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
By that, I mean eating lunch.
Perfect.